American Comics. Invincible, starting with Lord of the Shadow Kingdom. Chapter 1. In the hinterland of a certain desert, in an area controlled by 10 rings, deep in a desert cave. The interior of the mountain was hollowed out to create a simple dormitory for 8 people. A yellow-skinned young man was sitting by the bed with his hands clasped on his chin, silently observing the surrounding environment. The other 7 were sleeping, grunting, grinding teeth, pigs. It can be called a zoo-like dormitory, and the group of people slept very sweetly. Fang Quan, an enthusiastic traveler, just integrated the memory of this world and his namesake 10 minutes ago. He is currently in the Marvel Universe. This is a sad world where great gods are crawling all over the ground, natural disasters are walking around, Thanos sent half of the people away with a snap of his fingers, and ordinary people will die suddenly at any time. In this world, there are not only superheroes, but also supervillains, and even the power of gods and demons descended on the world. Mutants with various abilities are scattered in the cracks of the whole society. Ordinary people in this world can only passively endure various natural and man-made disasters. Ordinary people without power are the greatest tragedy in this world. And his predecessor was not only a cup, but also a cup that was broken on the table. Because he was kidnapped to the hinterland of the 10 rings. The former was a poor guy. When 10 rings was on a mission, because the car of these terrorist robbers exploded, the former unlucky taxi driver was caught, pointed at a gun and forced to board a thief ship. After coming here, he was used to the best of his ability and became a poor coolie. The people in this simple dormitory are also coolies, poor people who can't help themselves. It's not that no one wants to escape here, but most of the people who tried to escape here have already become corpses. A very lucky few, and only a very few. What's more, in my previous life, I was just an extreme sports enthusiast who focused on improving myself, and this predecessor was just a taxi driver. The ability he currently possesses is not strong yet, and it is very difficult to escape from here. Fang Quan clicked his tongue, propped his chin with his hand, and raised the corner of his mouth slightly. Things are getting interesting. Fang Quan likes this kind of challenging thing very much, especially the thrill of being on the verge of life and death, which can make his adrenaline soar and make him intoxicated and obsessed. Fang Quan began to seriously think about the escape plan, preparing to observe their patrol time carefully tomorrow, and then try to find a way to get a gun or the location of the arsenal. As long as you take the opportunity to make trouble at night, such as detonating the arsenal, the probability of escaping here is still very high. The best way to cover up a contradiction is to detonate an even bigger contradiction. Who cares about a flustered coolie when the arsenal blows up? Challenge system open. Newbie benefits have been presented. 1 random draw. The host, please draw a lottery. Fang Quan looked at the system frame floating 20 centimeters away from him, and raised his eyebrows. Has the gold finger arrived? Things seem to be getting more interesting. Lottery. Current lottery scope. World of Qianlong Adventures. In the lottery draw is over. Congratulations to the host for winning 10 ghost soldiers. Big explosion of luck. A horse charm is attached to the host. Fang Quan's eyes lit up. It's actually 10 immortal ghost soldiers. The ninjas of the Ghost Corps. This type of ninja, among the 9 Ghost Corps, are the ninjas with the most comprehensive functions, the most balanced and efficient combat power. These ninjas are not only proficient in martial arts and ninjutsu, but also proficient in technology, have extremely high intelligence, and have a good ability to learn modern technology. The most important thing is that even after the ghost soldiers die in battle, they will recover in the Dark Kingdom and return to the real world. 10 immortal ghost soldiers. This is already a first-class combat power in the mortal class, more than enough to solve the current predicament. Moreover, even more powerful is the horse charm. Horse talisman. The power of healing, which can make the holder remove all influences caused by external forces. The ability that can cure all diseases for the holder can also be used passively. Active. Heal all injuries. You can also restore things to their original best appearance. Passive. Regenerative healing factor. Fang Quan stared at the palm of his hand, and saw a translucent octagonal runestone emitting a shimmer, with a light blue horse head engraved on it. The horse talisman radiated light slightly, and a warmth radiated from the palm of the hand, flowing to the whole body, quickly sweeping away Fang Quan's previous minor ailments and exhaustion. The horse charm can not only be used actively, but also passively activated when the host is detected to be injured. After Fang Quan integrated the horse talisman, it is equivalent to possessing the regenerative healing factor. As long as the soul is not annihilated, the horse talisman can keep him immortal. Most importantly, Fang Quan can exert 100% of the magic power of the horse charm. This means that Fang Quan's state can always be maintained in the most perfect state. This is equivalent to possessing unlimited physical strength, unlimited vitality, and unlimited lifespan, and the qualifications for wanton explosive potential and crazy fighting. Fang Quan felt very satisfied. Very good, this is simply a god start. In the next battle, even if he is blown apart by a missile, he can perfectly recover to his peak state. Challenge mission released. Rescue Tony Stark from 10 rings. Reward: control of Ghost Shadow Legion. Fang Quan showed an excited smile. It's interesting, I have to save Tony. That's right, it's such a simple and boring thing to simply escape. The smile on Fang Quan's face was even wider. Fang Quan snapped his fingers. Come out, my loyal soldiers. Under the surrounding beds, the shadows under the irregular walls of the cave quickly stretched and crawled in front of Fang Quan like living creatures. 10 pairs of blood-red eyes opened in the shadows, like the downcast eyes of Death God came to the world. 10 ghost soldiers came out of the dark shadows, knelt down devoutly in front of Fang Quan, lowered their loyal heads, and quietly waited for the will of the Dark King. The ghost soldiers knelt on the ground quietly on one knee, and the dim light shone down, absorbed by their purple-black combat uniforms, and fell silent into the darkness. Fang Quan showed a satisfied smile. Killing the members of the 10 rings outside, I want to see a hearty killing, a feast that makes the enemy feel the ultimate fear. As an extreme athlete who has gone to the African wilderness to survive independently, Fang Quan doesn't care about life and death, but only cares about whether his will is carried out to the end. The 10 ghost soldiers raised their heads, their blood-red eyes glowed with murderous aura, and the murderous aura on their bodies became more ferocious. Fang Quan looked at the pop-up window floating in his field of vision, and added playfully, by the way, I found Tony Stark by the way, I still need to take him away from here, and get out by swiping a number of lucky draws. The 10 ghost soldiers looked at each other and bowed their heads one after another. The first ghost soldier raised his head and looked around, and found that there were no enemies around. With a wave of his hand, the rest of the ghost soldiers took orders one after another, escaped into the dark shadows, and went to the outside world to kill. In the big cave in the deepest part of the cave, where the lights are bright, the richest playboy in New York and Yin Sen, a scientist of emission mechanics and electronics, are imprisoned. Tony was wearing rough and worn tights, with non-slip gloves on his hands. His eyes were determined and full of courage, and his voice was extremely low. Yin Sen, we must speed up. Tony was standing in front of Mark I, with his arms open for Yin Sen to assemble his armor. Last night, Raza held the red-hot coals between the tongs and placed them in front of Yin Sen's mouth, which was pressed against the iron felt, forcing them to speed up their work, and demanded that the assembly be completed tonight. In order to prevent Yin Sen from suffering from despair, Tony was forced to agree to this request. The originally relaxed time suddenly became urgent. This is also his last chance to escape here. If he misses tonight, he will be tortured to death by these angry robbers. Because he didn't assemble the missile at all. Yin Sen looked slightly flustered. Okay, let's confirm again. 41 steps ahead, 16 steps to the right when going out. Hungarian, boom boom boom. Open the door, open the door. Tony's eyelids twitched slightly, maintaining a calm surface. Yin Sen, just reply to him a few words first, to delay time. Yin Sen's face turned pale slightly, and the hand that put on his armor began to tremble. I don't know Hungarian. Tony let out a breath to control his mood, and smiled. It's okay, the detonator bomb must understand Hungarian. Tony was also flustered inside, but he was still able to rely on his strong psychological quality to stabilize the situation. Although I don't know whether my head will be complete after 3 minutes. At the door, there is a detonator bomb made by Tony and Yin Sen. As long as the door is pushed open, the bomb will detonate, which can easily take away the lives of people nearby. Hungarian, no, help, help, boom, boom, boom. Hungarian, ah, devil, stab. The screams of the door knocker stopped abruptly, blood flowed from under the iron door, and a strong smell of blood filled the entire cave. Tony and Yin Sen looked at each other, feeling something was wrong. Tony asked hesitantly, civil unrest. Riot. Yin Sen shook his head decisively. No, they. Boom. Crack. The bomb at the door was detonated, and the iron gate was immediately blown away, smashing deeply into the opposite mountain wall. Almost at the same time, the crisp sound of bone cracking reached their ears. This means that the person standing outside the door has been blown into shattered fractures by the bomb in the iron door. At the same time, it also means that their only defense method has failed, and there is not much time left for preparation. Tony's eyes sharpened in an instant. The Mark I was only half assembled, and he couldn't fight back yet. Sweat dripped from Yin Sen's forehead, his voice was trembling, and he hurriedly put on the armor for Tony. There is not enough time. Tony said in a deep voice. Don't worry, you go and start the program, and I will do the rest myself. As long as the weapon program is loaded, he can definitely buy a lot of time. Yin Sen hurriedly put down the screwdriver, turned around and pressed F11 and the enter key. A progress bar popped up on the computer screen, and a 1% popped out slowly, stubbornly moving forward on the spot. According to this progress, it is definitely enough for those robbers to rush in and kill them 100 times. Yin Sen's face became heavy, and he gritted his teeth. I'll buy time for you. Tony's face changed drastically, but because the power program hadn't been loaded, he was trapped in the Mark I and couldn't move. No. This is different from what we agreed on. Time. What time? This bomb is quite powerful. Yin Sen turned his head to look at the door in horror. He never expected that members of the Ten Commandments gang would approach here so quickly after being bombed just once. Tony clenched his back teeth tightly, his eyes were bloodshot. Yin Sen, help me hold him back. Just wait until the 20% progress bar, the arm power system can be loaded. Yin Sen's face was full of extreme fear, his body was trembling with fear, he couldn't stop backing away, and muttered in his mouth, evil, devil. Tony leaned his back against the door, feeling very bad, but he didn't know what Yin Sen saw. Fang Quan pulled out the shrapnel stuck in his face with his hands calmly, and the long blood flowed out, and even the blood was constantly flowing from his body. The power of the horse charm was constantly pushing out these foreign objects, and continued to heal with a wound. After possessing the horse charm, Fang Quan also possessed a very high pain immunity ability, which could ignore the severe pain on his body. However, the current scene is too bloody, which challenges the psychological endurance of human beings a bit. Fang Quan pulled out the shrapnel inserted into his mouth, and licked the wound that healed quickly with his tongue. Tisk, if it weren't for the regenerative healing factor, I'm afraid I would be sent away in a wave. The ghost soldiers started killing quickly after going out. In the dark night, ordinary people couldn't defend against these first-class ghost ninjas, killing randomly along the way. Fang Quan is in charge of quacking, and ghost soldiers are in charge of random killing. After the ghost soldiers found Tony's place of imprisonment, Fang Quan rushed over leisurely, admiring the superb killing skills of the ghost soldiers, and beheaded all the enemies. Then, Fang Quan stood in front of the prison iron gate. The ghost soldiers stood on both sides very respectfully, and the leader ghost even thoughtfully raised the door handle and pushed open the iron gate for Fang Quan. As a result, the 10 ghosts were killed in an instant, and Fang Quan's iron door was smashed into the wall, and he couldn't even buckle it. Fortunately, the ghost soldiers were immortal, resurrected from the darkness and sprang out. The 10 ghosts hurriedly pulled Fang Quan out of the wall, dusted off his clothes, and straightened his appearance. Fang Quan silently asked the ghosts to stand near the door to keep vigilant. He pulled out the shrapnel from his face and walked into the cave. As soon as he came in, he saw Yin Sen, who was in fear, and Tony's shout came from behind the canvas. Fang Quan glanced at Yin Sen, who was stunned, showing no interest in him, and looked to the side covered by the heavy canvas. The leader, ghosting, followed up very intimately, drew out the tang knife, stepped forward to cut off the canvas, and then joined forces with another ghost soldier to turn Mark I, whose back was facing Fang Quan, around. Tony looked at the blood-drenched yellow man in front of him, and a sense of extreme fear spread in his heart. Blood was dripping all over his body, his clothes and pants were blown to pieces, and there were bomb fragments slowly squeezing out on his chest. It was a living horror movie scene. Fang Quan wiped the blood from his face, and his face became even more frightening. Tony, you made this bomb. The effect is really good. If it weren't for my regenerative healing factor, you would have got 11 consecutive kills. Tony feigned shock on his face, but he was quickly estimating the loading progress of his program in his heart, trying to buy time. Who are you? Fang Quan glanced at the computer screen on the table in the distance, and there was only a 2% progress bar on it, and his tone could not be refuted. 10 million yuan, I will save your life for the time being. Tony noticed the look in his eyes, and his heart skipped a beat, but he sneered in a self-deprecating tone. What? My Tony is worth 10 million yuan. Fang Quan smiled. 30 million yuan, I will fight for the program loading time of the Mark I for you. Tony's eyes instantly became complicated, and he looked at Fang Quan in shock. Do you understand? This man knows what he's doing. Why is there a genius who can understand what I'm doing in this shitty place? Fang Quan clicked his tongue. 40 million yuan, you talk too much nonsense. Tony said in a deep voice. 50 million yuan, plus my Tony Stark's friendship, help me protect Yin Sen as well. When I return to the group, I will give you an extra reward. Fang Quan smiled. I want a Mark III armor. At present, I don't have enough combat ability yet, so grabbing Tony's armor is the best solution. The corner of Tony's mouth twitched. Are you blackmailing me? If he gets out alive and upgrades this set of steel armor technology, this is definitely a terrifying individual warfare technology that is difficult to target at the current stage. Such a thing is too dangerous for a stranger. I want to leave alive, but it doesn't mean I want to indirectly cause terrorist incidents. Fang Quan looked at him playfully. Are you sure you want to reject me who killed me all the way here? Tony glanced at the ninja standing beside Fang Quan respectfully, and raised his eyebrows. Deal. No matter what, as long as he can return home alive, he can talk about anything. Moreover, this young man was able to break into here without a trace, and he also has such a strange healing ability, it is worth making friends with. Best of all, as long as you wait for the program to load, any issues shouldn't be a problem. The leader ghost respectfully took out a chair from the darkness and placed it behind Fang Quan, while the two ghost soldiers at the side obediently took out a necromancer robe from the shadows and handed it to Fang Quan. Fang Quan looked down at his beggar's attire, shrugged his shoulders, and spread his arms, allowing the three ghost soldiers to serve him. Tony's eyelids twitched. What are you? Witchcraft. Magic. How on earth did chairs, clothes, and the technology that someone just disappeared do? Fang Quan closed his eyes, letting the leader ghosting wipe the blood on his face with a wet towel. Dark magic. Da da da. The deafening sound of gunshots came from outside the cave. The 7 ghost soldiers standing near the door raised their heads in unison, their blood-red eyes exuded a terrifying murderous look, and looked indifferently towards the direction of the gunshots. 2 of the ghost soldiers quickly disappeared into the shadows. In the next second, there was a terrifying scream from where the gunshot came from. Ah! The screams were very short, and soon, the cave fell into silence. The bloody smell in the cave became faintly stronger. Tony felt that the worldview was being challenged. Isn't this ninjutsu? I saw with my own eyes 2 iron blue ninjas walking straight into the shadows, and then there were terrified screams from a distance. This is much more exciting than magic. Fang Quan's face was wiped clean, and he put on a brand new necromancer robe. He opened his eyes with a calm expression. Magic, all of this is magic. Excitement ignited in Tony's eyes. I only know about such an interesting thing now. If you are willing to cooperate with my research, I am willing to give you another 10 million yuan. Fang Quan glanced at Tony indifferently, ignored him, sat on the chair, and waited for the report from the ghostly soldiers. The leader ghost stood on the spot and tilted his head slightly. After listening to the reports of the other 2 ghost soldiers, he bowed his head respectfully and approached Fang Quan, passing the scene in his mind to him. The report of the leader ghost appeared in Fang Quan's mind, raised his eyebrows, and looked at the camera installed above the cave. They saw us through the monitor, and they are going to blow up the tunnel to trap us. On the wall of the cave, there are 3 full monitors installed. Almost all the scenes in the room can be seen at a glance. The leader, ghosting, bowed slightly and stood obediently on one side. Fang Quan sneered and rubbed his chin. It's ridiculous, you think you can trap us like this? Go, kill them all. The leader Guiying's eyes flashed fiercely, and he respectfully knelt down on one knee to take orders, and then sank into the shadows on the ground. The remaining Ghost soldiers knelt on one knee to take orders, and followed the leader, Ghost, into the shadows one after another. In the blink of an eye, the 10 Ghost soldiers disappeared without a trace. Tony opened his mouth wide. Oh, fuck, these people can do magic. Yin Sen adjusted his glasses tremblingly, and put his hands together. My God. Although these people seemed to come to rescue Tony and himself. But, my God, these people look horrible. ... Raza stroked the ring on his finger with his right hand, and his face was full of sternness. Where did these guys in black clothes come from? In just a few minutes, he sensed something was wrong and immediately came to the monitoring room. Only 2 terrified corpses remained on the ground, lying in a pool of blood, and opened their hearts to meet Death God. Holding the communicator in his hand, his face was also extremely ugly, and he hurriedly reported, "Report, the enemy came in lurking, and after killing our patrol team, they went straight to Tony Stark's prison room. The team we went to besiege was all dead." Quote, "The losses were severe. In just 10 minutes, nearly 20 people died." Looking at the scene on the monitor, Raza said in a deep voice, "Blow up the passage first to prevent them from taking Tony away. You, go and lead someone to check the vicinity to see if there are other enemies." Deputy, "Okay, let's do it." Raza slammed his fist on the table angrily. His face was full of impatience. "Suspend the deal with Obadiah first, and get rid of these idiots first." No one behind him responded. The room became silent, and a bloody smell came into his nostrils. On the monitor screen that was lit in front of Raza, a figure in black combat uniform was reflected. His pupils shrank sharply, and he drew the gun with his left hand instantly, and the muzzle of the gun was turned upside down to shoot behind him. In just over a second, the magazine in his hand was emptied, and his body also dodged to the side. Submachine gun. Raza broke out in a cold sweat, and threw the pistol away after the magazine was emptied, grabbed the submachine gun and turned around to aim at the door. Raza only saw a puff of light black smoke slowly dissipating in the air, while his deputy was covering his cut throat, making a slight noise, and stretched out a blood-stained palm towards himself in despair. On the chest of the deputy, there is even a long knife piercing through the heart. Fatally wounded, hopeless, Raza was silent for a moment, raised his gun and pointed it at the deputy's head. Snapped. The divine light in the deputy's eyes froze instantly, and his blood-stained palm fell weakly on the ground, his body lying in a pool of blood. Raza cursed angrily. "Devil, get out." The surveillance room was quiet, and even the soldiers who were supposed to be guarding the door didn't respond. In the middle of the night, the cold wind in the desert blew in, and a strong smell of blood poured in, and Raza's face became extremely ugly. Outside the door, there were 4 soldiers guarding them. It took just over a minute to walk in and look at the monitor. Even when his deputy was killed, he didn't realize it in time. Since when did these guys start? Raza stared closely at the door, and out of the corner of his eye, he looked at the body of his deputy on the ground. Long knife. Why is it a long knife? Wouldn't it be better to use a tactical dagger? Raza kicked the table over and used it as a cover, looking at the corpse on the ground out of the corner of his eye, analyzing how the enemy made a move. Bright lights poured down, and the pool of blood on the ground quietly reflected Raza's tense face and a pair of blood-red eyes behind him. Raza's breathing stopped in shock, his heart beat to the top of his throat. He rushed forward quickly, turned over the table, and fell on the still warm corpse of his deputy. Half of his body was smashed into a pool of blood. And in this short moment, he only had time to turn his body halfway. Shua. The gleaming Tang Dao lay across Leiza's neck. Raza stiffly remained half lying in a pool of blood, not daring to move. Tang Dao pressed down slightly, cutting the skin of Leiza's neck. Raza hastily let go of the submachine gun in his hand and shouted, "Surrender." "I surrender." The ghost soldier stared at him with bloody eyes, squinted his eyes slightly, lifted his neck with Tang Dao, and raised his head to signal him to get up. Raza understood, and hastily put his hands in the blood, stood up, and then raised his hands high. The ghost soldier put away the Tang Dao, signaled to follow with his bloody eyes, turned around and walked towards the door neatly, not caring at all whether Raza would pick up the submachine gun on the ground and shoot at himself. Raza smiled wryly, feeling a deep gap, and huge amounts of powerlessness filled his heart. "I didn't even know when the enemy stood behind me, and what was even more frightening was that my jumping and rolling speed was not as fast as the enemy's knife. Within 3 meters, the speed at which he picked up the gun was definitely not as fast as the opponent's speed at cutting off his own neck. Tony's Mark I has successfully started and can't wait to get out of here. Fang Quan walked leisurely ahead with his hands in his pockets, while the loyal ghost soldiers acted as shields in front to protect their Dark King. Wearing the Mark I, Tony whistled with confidence, "Hey boy, I don't know what your name is yet." Fang Quan lazily took the figure of 8 steps. "Fang Quan." Tony laughed loudly. "Fang Quan. Are you from Sakura country?" In an instant, the 5 ghost soldiers who walked in front of Fang Quan turned their heads and stared at Tony with murderous blood eyes. The laziness on Fang Quan dissipated. He looked at Tony with an extremely hostile look, and said in a low voice, "Do you want to die?" Tony felt chills all over, and couldn't help swallowing. The strong killing intent made his eyebrows ache. He didn't understand where he had provoked this powerful bodyguard, and tried to ease the atmosphere. "Hey, do you want to increase the price? I'll give you a private car, Curry's sports car, how about it?" Fang Quan stared at Tony. The hostility in his eyes gradually faded, and his tone was calm. "I am from the Dragon Kingdom." Tony couldn't help cursing. "Fake. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were from the Dragon Country. Do you have a favorite beauty star? When I go back, I will arrange her to lie in your luxurious villa soft bed." For the people of the Dragon Kingdom, you say that he is a person from the Sakura Kingdom, which is no different from calling him a devil who will go to hell. Yin Sen, who was standing behind Tony, had layers of cold sweat on his forehead, and raised his sleeve to wipe his forehead. Fang Quan snorted coldly. "Forget it, you can change Mark III to Mark IV before sending it to me." Tony pretended to be hearty and said with a smile, "Okay, I can afford this price." Yin Sen noticed that the atmosphere was frozen, and quickly changed the subject. "Why is it so quiet outside?" Tony smelled the smell of blood in the air, and he was smart enough to realize what was going on outside. Fang Quan turned his head to look at Yin Sen, but did not answer, but continued to walk towards the entrance of the cave. Soon, the 3 of them came to the entrance of the cave. Outside the entrance of the cave is a flat yellow land, on which there are neatly placed arms boxes, as well as 10 rings members kneeling neatly. Raza put his head in his hands and knelt in the front. Not far from him was a pool of blood, and several corpses with their hearts open were lying on their backs in the pool of blood, with the horror before death remaining on their faces. The 5 ghost soldiers respectfully knelt on one knee and were at the front, welcoming their Dark King. Tony was stunned for a moment. 5 ninjas with knives can subdue so many people. "Hey, Fang Quan, your subordinates are much better than sharpshooters. The strength of this rescuer is far stronger than what I imagined." Fang Quan stroked his chin, looked at Raza in front of him, and remembered something. "Do you want to know who kidnapped you?" Seeing that the situation has been suppressed by Fang Quan's subordinates, Tony was in a good mood. Definitely think, I will make this guy pay the worst price in the world." A ghost soldier stood up, and Tang Dao pressed down on Raza's neck with lightning speed. Raza hurriedly raised his head and begged for mercy. "I said it, it was Obadiah. He paid us to kill you." "Tony, we didn't kill you, we just kidnapped you. Please let me go, subordinates." Tony opened the mask. His face was full of anger and disbelief. "Impossible, it can't be him." The leader Guiying thoughtfully took out the camera found on Raza, and opened one of the pictures, which contained the record of the arms transaction between Obadiah and Raza. Tony's face froze. His eyes were slightly slackened, as if his whole energy had been interrupted. He stood there in a daze. Obadiah, the elder who was also uncle and father, who had supported him for half his life, would actually be his murderer. Fang Quan smelled a good smell, moved his nose, and looked at Tony. It was found that this sweet smell came from his body. Detected a strong energy of despair and is absorbing it. Dark energy progress. 10%, increasing. After the progress bar is accumulated, you will get a lottery draw. Fang Quan's eyes light up slightly. Interesting. Tony is really a chicken that lays golden eggs. After just a few short contacts, he can get 2 lucky draw opportunities. Fang Quan had a good impression of Tony, and his tone softened a lot. "Look, this is just an appetizer. When you go back, Obadiah will kick you out of the company. As a time traveler, he knows a thing or two about the plot of Iron Man, and he knows that Obadiah is a murderer for money, a staunch supporter behind the terrorist group and a part-time villain Iron Overlord. Tony's pupils narrowed sharply, and his face became slightly ferocious. He dares. The company is the only legacy left to him by his father. Obadiah, dare you? Challenge mission. Kill the complete Iron Overlord. Task reward. Number of spell draws +1. Fang Quan looked at Tony with more and more satisfied eyes. Not bad. From now on, Tony will be my relatives and friends. Anyone who dares to touch him will have to pay more. Looking at Fang Quan's schadenfreude eyes, Tony was very upset. No, I don't believe it. How could Obadiah do this? Fang Quan was in a good mood. Imitating Tony whistled once. Hey, kid, don't worry, you'll know if it's true when you get back. Raza, who was kneeling on the ground, squeezed out a smile and raised his hands. My lord, can you let me go? Everything about me is true. Fang Quan turned his head and looked at the person who interrupted his conversation with Tony. His eyes were slightly cold. Shua. The tang knife in the ghost soldier's hand flashed coldly, and the knife was already in its sheath. Holding the penetrating wound on his chest, Raza looked at Fang Quan in despair, with blood foaming from his mouth. My lord, what I said is true. Fang Quan's eyes were calm. I know. Thump. Raza fell to the ground, and the despair in his eyes gradually solidified. Fang Quan smiled and looked at Tony again. Young man, the moonlight illuminates the warm sand road we are walking on. Do you still want to stay here? At the moment, Tony is still a handsome young man with delicate skin, full of confidence and youthful charm, and has not yet become that calm middle-aged steel hero. Tony looked at Fang Quan, shuddered, and realized how dangerous Fang Quan was, and felt that his own set of Mark I could not completely protect himself. Because that knife, too fast. Fang Quan just made a slight change in his eyes, and these ninjas in black were able to comprehend the attack in an instant. This is an extremely terrifying force. Roddy received a satellite call from the heart of the desert, and it was Tony Stark calling. Roddy burst into tears of joy, hurriedly drove the helicopter, and flew the special forces to the area where the signal came from. When Roddy arrived with the special forces, he saw the corpses of a group of robbers piled up on the sand dunes outside the gang base. And Tony, whom I missed, was wearing a set of steel armor, listening to the chatter of a man in a necromancer robe with a broken face. Sitting on a chair, Fang Quan crossed his legs and gave Tony a popular science about his future with great interest. Let me tell you, you will die a miserable life in the future. In order to save half of the people in the universe, you snap your fingers and kill yourself. Bye. Tony's face was full of resistance. No, I don't believe it. I can't be such a selfless person. How could this be me? What I should be thinking is that I'm going to have love with a beauty on the cover of some modeling magazine tomorrow. Instead of saving the entire universe. The more Fang Quan resisted Tony, the more excited he became, and the spitting stars flew out. You don't believe it. Then you go back and wait for an agent named Phil Coulson to come to the door. You ask him to ask director Nick Fury, ask him if he has a baby named Tesseract. That thing is the space gem, one of the infinite gems I told you about. Seeing Luo Di approaching, Fang Quan said with interest, the more you avoid fate, the more fate will come to you in a way you don't want. Tony's psychological defense was a bit broken. Before Roddy came here, this lunatic not only counted his past in detail, but also happily talked about his father's past and achievements, as well as his own background. The most frustrating thing is, this guy, I am actually very serious about my future. Fang Quan saw the resistance on Tony's face reached its peak, and said confidently, hey. Do you think I'm talking nonsense? After you go back this time, you will definitely buy a ring and prepare to propose to Pepper Potts at any time. The panic on Tony's face reached its peak. He didn't want his friend Roddy to hear the prophecy of the lunatic necromancer to him. Because, after I was safe, the first person I wanted to see the most was Pepper Potts. Why can this lunatic see the future? Okay, I believe it. You crazy. Tony cursed angrily, his expression a little broken. What this lunatic said is too accurate. Nothing wrong. Tony didn't dare try to deduce what the madman said, because he was afraid that everything the madman said was true. In the words of this lunatic, in the future, I will encounter the loss of Pepper Potts at least 3 times. Tony at the moment realized that this girl who had been with him for more than 10 years had become the only light in his spiritual world. I must not lose her. Fang Quan laughed loudly, feeling satisfied with the rapid increase of the dark progress bar. It turns out that breaking Tony's mentality can speed up the absorption of dark energy, which is interesting. Roddy trotted over and saw that Tony was safe and sound. His tense face softened, and he looked at Fang Quan. Hello, may I ask who you are? While asking with a smile, Roddy diverged his footsteps slightly, wary of this stranger who was staying beside his best friend. Fang Quan laughed, stood up, in a good mood, and stretched out his hand. Fang Quan, a native of Longguo, is Tony's psychotherapist. Mr. Tony has suffered too much during this time, and I am just doing psychological work for him counseling. Definitely, if torturing the mind is also called psychological counseling, then I must be full marks. Tony took 2 deep breaths and stabilized his mood. Roddy, take him and Yin-sen, I want to go back early. Being locked up for 3 months is not the worst thing. The worst part was listening to this lunatic tell his whole life. Roddy looked slightly strange, but still ordered according to his best friend. You can take off this steel armor and get on our safest gunship, brother, this time, there will never be another accident. With a haggard look on his face, Tony nodded and didn't speak any more. Fang Quan hummed a ditty and walked towards the armed helicopter on his own. Tony adjusted his mood, and soon got on the helicopter gunship wearing steel armor, and Yin-sen followed. Roddy saw that Tony could walk and move, with a smile on his face, and happily let others clean up the battlefield, while he was the co-pilot of the armed helicopter. The helicopter took off, and Yin-sen helped Tony take off the steel armor. After Tony took off his steel armor, he sat opposite Fang Quan. The sunlight from the window only illuminated half of his face. Half of his face was shining slightly, while the other half was hidden in the shadows, which looked quite mysterious. Tony recalled everything that Fang Quan just said, and everything was so hard to refute. This feeling is like, if you want to refute, it's like you want to refute yourself. Tony couldn't deny the strange feeling, and even wondered if he was under the influence of this crazy necromancer's magic. But, the more he resists fate in his heart, the more Tony wants to know one thing, the more he wants to know whether the carefully hidden desire in his heart will be realized in the future. Tony leaned forward, looking at Fang Quan with longing and serious eyes. Fang Quan looked at him, and couldn't help restraining the smirk on his face, and said seriously, "What's wrong?" Tony felt that the words were on his lips, but he didn't know how to ask, and his mood couldn't help but fluctuate. Fang Quan saw this playboy's face of concentration and innocence, and his mind was moved, and he vaguely realized what he wanted to ask. Pepper pots. Tony's eyes moved slightly, his mouth opened and closed, and he asked very seriously, "Are Potts and I married? How will our future be?" The noisy helicopter fell silent in an instant. Roddy, who was sitting in the front co-pilot, turned his head in shock, and looked over eagerly with unstoppable curiosity on his face. Oh, God, Playboy Tony actually has a sweetheart. This is a million times stranger than Tony being kidnapped. Looking at the sunlight coming through the window, Roddy wondered for a while on the innocent and focused face under the sunlight, whether he was on the helicopter because of taking drugs today. Grass. It turned out to be true. I would rather believe that my eyes are blind. Yin-sen, who was sitting next to Tony, had an expression on his face, pricking up his ears seriously, for fear that he might miss a word. Fang Quan restrained his playfulness, and said seriously, "You are married, and you have a cute little princess. You are living happily." Tony let out a long sigh of satisfaction, and leaned back on the back of the chair. His whole face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes were shining brightly. Hope, contentment, longing, happiness. This is a kind of life is satisfied, but very complicated eyes. At this moment, Tony's eyes made everyone feel a sense of shock that went straight to the heart. Seeing that he was very happy, Fang Quan showed a kind smile. "You died when your daughter was about to enter elementary school." Tony bounced up, clenched his fists, and blushed. "Rage, you bloody lunatic. Can't you let me experience the happiness I've been pursuing all my life?" Progress bar plus 5%. Fang Quan showed a sincere smile. A true warrior dares to face the bloody reality. You have to be a warrior, Tony. Is there a more intimate and pleasant sound in the world than the mission completion sound? Yo, If there is, it must be Tony's furious, impotent and furious look at this moment. Fang Quan closed his eyes in satisfaction, listened to Tony's symphony screams, and chose to integrate control of the Ghost Army. Integrating control of Ghost Shadow Army. Fang Quan closed his eyes, and mentally felt a vast dark world. In this dark world, powerful ghost soldiers were moving. They are exercising, they are learning from each other, they are hunting dark creatures, they are practicing. The ghost soldiers felt a supreme will coming. Qi Shushu stopped the activities of their hands, lowered their loyal heads, knelt on one knee, and surrendered to Fang Quan's will. Fang Quan's mental power was swept away, and he saw the noble and absolute loyalty in the blood eyes of all the ghost soldiers. The smile on Fang Quan's face grew wider. From then on, he initially possessed the invincible strength in this world. Ghost Shadow Legion, this is an immortal super dark legion. I can also be regarded as one of the first-class powerhouses. Regenerative healing factor, the Immortal Legion, plus knowing the general direction of the future. I really have a bright future. Fang Quan opened his eyes in satisfaction, very satisfied with what he had gained. On the other hand, Tony was still waving his hands and singing the symphony, but he couldn't come up with strong evidence to refute Fang Quan's prophecy. Because Tony knows that what Fang Quan said has a high probability is true. Just because it is true, it is difficult for him to accept some facts, and it is easier to accept some facts. It is difficult to accept the fact that he died. It is easy to accept the fact that you are happy. Rhodey's eyes widened, and he began to wonder if the dragon countryman had cast some mysterious oriental spell on Tony, which could actually make this calm and arrogant super genius break through like this. Prophecy. Real or fake? Roddy doesn't believe in prophecy. But Roddy did know that his close friend really liked Pepper Potts, but he didn't expect that the relationship would reach this level. Thinking about it carefully, although it is somewhat unexpected, it is also reasonable. The only one who can marry this idiot is this excellent girl who has been with him for more than 10 years and knows everything about him. Oh, seeing such a fool actually have a partner, it's even more uncomfortable than killing me. While deeply envious, Rhodey turned his head full of sadness, looked at the flight crew who was trying to fly the helicopter while turning his head to eat melons, and slapped the helmet. What are you looking at? Fly your helicopter. The flight officer was not angry, but he didn't dare to disobey the orders of his superiors. He muttered a few curses in his mouth, and obediently continued to fly the helicopter. The atmosphere on the helicopter was extra lively because of Fang Quan. Fang Quan devoted himself to dismantling Tony's mentality along the way, and often provoked him with things Tony cared about, and then gave Tony hope, and after giving Tony hope, he decisively told him fragmented experiences of despair. Tony knew that he was being hit by a mental impact, but he was powerless to resist, so he could only endure Fang Quan's blow while looking for hope from the fragmented future information he learned. Fang Quan knew that Tony couldn't do without his information, so he showed a smug smile, hit him meanly, and swiped the progress bar. Time passed by, and after a short rest, Rhodey took everyone on a comfortable VIP plane and flew to their destination. Tony, who has experienced ups and downs, is sitting in a wheelchair. Seeing that the cabin door is about to open, he stood up with exhaustion and tried his best to show a spirited face. But in fact, everyone could see Tony's pale face, pale and dry lips. Seeing his miserable appearance, Fang Quan let out a little gasp, and then remembered that he still has a horse charm, which can heal Tony's illness and save his life. Along the way, I just happily scrolled through the progress bar, admiring Tony's lively singing symphony, but it was hard to imagine that he was actually a seriously injured wounded. Fang Quan reached out and grabbed Tony's arm, ready to heal him. Tony saw that the cabin door was halfway down, and the girl Potts he liked was standing in front of the plane waiting for him with red circles around his eyes. His heart was touched and excited, and he subconsciously shook off Fang Quan's arm. No, don't help me. I can't show fragility and weakness in front of my beloved, even a little bit. Fang Quan opened his mouth slightly, and from the brief contact just now, he clearly felt how bad Tony's situation is now. Tony, who looks like a man of steel, is hovering on the verge of death at any time at this moment. As long as there is something wrong with the gadget on his chest, it is normal to die suddenly in the next second. Tony walked towards Potts in a seemingly steady but excited way, trying to make every step perfect so that Potts would not see that he was seriously injured. Tony walked up to Potts, looked at her with reddish eye circles, and smiled confidently. "Why, seeing the boss come back alive, you cried excitedly." Potts raised his hand to wipe the corner of his eyes, wept slightly, and retorted with a smile, "No, it's because I'm happy that I don't have to lose my job." Fang Quan saw Tony struggling to show his majesty in front of Potts, his eyes lit up, and he thought of a way to quickly fill up the progress bar. Let Tony taste the beauty of love, and then tell him that Potts will almost be killed by the iron bully in the future. His mentality can definitely explode on the spot. Won't the progress bar fill up instantly? A good way is to show the love between Tony and Potts first. The best way to show love is to kick Tony first, hovering on the verge of life and death, and let Potts realize that he loves Tony. Yin Sen looked at the scene in front of him, leaned forward, and said enviously, "Thank you, you made him realize that he is actually a person with love and family." Fang Quan was a little embarrassed when he thought of the cruelty of the next scene. "Really? I'm going to let him embrace the beauty. Let Tony's life be dying first, make Potts cry excitedly, induce her to confess his love before Tony's death, and then cure Tony with the horse charm." Tony would definitely wish to give all his belongings to himself. Oh, perfect plan. If he breaks his happy state of mind later, everything will be done. Yin Sen looked at him in surprise. "How?" Fang Quan showed a bright smile, and snapped his fingers, signaling the ghost to make a move. Fang Quan still didn't forget to give a thoughtful order to tell Ghosting to pay attention to the strength of his shots, so that he doesn't really get kicked to death. The leader ghost flew out of the shadow behind Fang Quan at lightning speed, brushed Roddy's shoulder and turned into an extreme shadow, and he kicked Tony's back with a perfect flying kick. Tony flew out high, dancing and spinning in midair with a dazed expression, turning his head sideways to see who kicked him hard. Shadow Ninja. Why? Tony fell to the ground and slid for a long distance, feeling a sharp pain in his chest, several tiny mechanical fragments and a large amount of blood bursting out. Tony's nerves were temporarily blocked from the pain-sensing nerves because of the severe pain. Tony looked at the tiny mechanical fragments that flew out, his eyes dazed. Fuck, what the hell is this lunatic doing? It's impossible for him to save himself and then kill me, right? What is he trying to figure out? I haven't got the Mark IV that Fang Quan wants most, and he can't kill me. Tony. Potts' screams and screams resounded throughout the airport. The armed men around were all shocked, and they didn't see where the ninja in black came out from at all. They only saw a black shadow flash past, and Tony flew out. This process is as short as a little over a second, and there is not enough reaction time at all. Da da da. A burst of rapid gunshots rang out, and the ghost figure of the leader disappeared into the shadow cast by the plane beside him. Fang Quan's actor-level acting skills came online, and he hurriedly shouted, "Assassin, I'm a doctor. Get out of the way." Tony's mouth was full of blood, and he couldn't speak, and his mind was full of what this fool was doing. "Isn't that one of yours?" Potts jumped in front of Tony, clutching his palm tightly, his eyes were red, and he shouted in panic and pain, "Doctor! Come and save Tony." Tony looked at Potts, who was anxious, painful, and sad for himself, and vaguely realized what this fool was doing. "Great job, don't do it next time. This is a bit of a waste of my life." The doctors and nurses who were already on standby at the airport rushed over with first aid kits in their hands. Fang Quan also joined in the fun and followed behind them, watching with his hands behind his back with great interest, seeing that Tony couldn't die for a while, happily in front of the melon-eating crowd. Yin Sen rushed up and got behind the doctors, shouting in a hurry, "Look for the magnet. There are shrapnel near his heart. Use the magnet to catch the shrapnel." He didn't know what Fang Quan was doing, and now he only cared about whether Tony could survive. Potts was so anxious that he cried out. While getting out of the way, he knelt not far from Tony and cried, "Please, save him quickly, he can't die." After Tony's calm calculations, as long as the people nearby are not stupid, his life will not be in danger, except that he will lose a lot of blood. Therefore, he is very calm. By the way, the strength of this ghost is well grasped. Just enough to kick me out, but not really kill me. Fuck, this perfect sense of strength is really enviable. Fang Quan came behind Potts with his hands behind his back, pretending to be sorry. Miss Potts, you don't know, Mr. Tony has experienced several life-threatening situations. Say your name. Potts covered his mouth. Grief and surprise welled up in his heart, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Tony, Tony, my Tony. If Tony hadn't been seriously injured, unable to speak or move, he would have given this lunatic necromancer a thumbs up. Fang Quan, you shouldn't have a Mark 4, I'm giving you a Mark 5. Fang Quan looked at Tony's situation pretendingly, and said sadly, oh my god, poor Tony Stark, I'm sure I won't be able to live anymore. Tony, do you still have any wishes that haven't been fulfilled? Tony's eyes widened, and the curse in his heart was loud. You just capped your hand. My mouth is so full of blood, I can't even speak. Fang Quan saw that Tony's mouth was full of blood, fell silent for a moment, and squeezed forward. Get out of the way, get out of the way, I know first aid, let me do it. The nurse who was sweating profusely from fear was squeezed away by Fang Quan. Fang Quan stepped forward, pressed his hands around his chest, and used a little bit of the power of the horse charm so that Tony could at least speak. Tony felt the itching on his chest, and knowing that the wound had healed a little, the curse in his heart became louder. You will be amazing. Fang Quan looked at Tony seriously, and said miserably, Mr. Tony, do you have any other wishes? The most important one. Tony twisted his face slightly in pain, looked at Potts, his eyes couldn't help but care. Potts, Potts. Tony reached out his hand hard and grabbed Potts. Potts hurriedly grabbed his palm. I am. Fang Quan smirked, and said in a sympathetic voice, my god, Mr. Tony is going to die soon. Miss Potts, do you have anything to say? The doctors and nurses on the side stared blankly. What the hell are you talking about? He can still save it. Yin Sen carefully noticed that the wound on Tony's chest had healed a little, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He understood what Fang Quan was doing. Potts' eyes were red from crying. Alive, Tony, I only want you to live, just hold on, hold on. Fang Quan arched fire. Miss Potts, do you care about Mr. Tony? Potts grabbed Tony's hand and held it tightly to his chest, crying, Love, I love him. God, please help Tony. When Rhodey, who was onlookers, heard this, his molars were shattered. Why don't you hurry up and treat him? The doctors and nurses looked at the strange shape of Tony's chest, and they have just stabilized the general situation. The fundamental problem still needs to wait for the arrival of the magnet and electric box to continue to solve it. Fang Quan pressed Tony's chest with one hand, looked at him, and smiled. Mr. Tony, did you hear that? Even though Tony was sweating from the pain, he still showed a happy smile. I heard. Oh Fang Quan, your devil-like method is too powerful. After Fang Quan confirmed that he heard it, he raised his eyebrows. Hold on, it might hurt a little. Question marks popped up on Tony's head. What are you going to do? Fang Quan snorted. Horse charm, healing. In an instant, Fang Quan's palm burst out with clear white light, covering Tony's chest. The wound on Tony's heart began to heal quickly. A sharp burst of piercing pain broke out, and the screams skyrocketed with the burst of white light. The white light dissipated, and there was a reactor flowing with electrolytic solution on Tony's chest, accompanied by a pool of blood. Fang Quan shook off the blood on his hand in disgust. Fang Quan shot, it must be a fine product. Mr. Tony, how do you feel? Tony blinked in confusion, and with a push, he got up directly from the ground, and the shattered reactor on his chest lost its function and fell to the ground. Potts stopped crying, and sobbed from time to time, staring at Tony who stood up and was intact. Tony looked at Fang Quan, and said gratefully, the Mark 6, which I upgraded with all my strength, is for you. Number 5 is no longer enough to express the grace of saving lives. It must be a brand new upgraded Mark 6. Seeing that he was full of motivation, Fang Quan approached him with a smile, hugged him, approached his ear, and said softly, Obadiah is the first person in your life who almost killed Pepper Potts. Tony's pupils constricted sharply, his mentality burst instantly, and extreme horror and anger welled up in his heart. He knew he was deluding himself, he knew he was waiting for proof that he couldn't forgive Obadiah. But Tony never expected that all the actions of Obadiah predicted by Fang Quan would step on everything he cared about. Progress bar plus 10%. Progress bar 100%. Number of lucky draws plus 1. Fang Quan let go of Tony, grabbed his shoulder, and smiled. Just go and check his computer folder yourself. Very good, doing this is really powerful. Tony's eyes became sharp and resolute in an instant. I can bear to put myself through danger. But, Obadiah, you shouldn't touch pots. Fang Quan smiled kindly and gently. Luo Di, Yin Sen, the surrounding medical staff and armed personnel all looked at Fang Quan in shock. Roddy's face was shocked, and his hands imitated Fang Quan's movements, and his mouth made, ah, 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 ah. Just make it. Roddy had observed the reactor in Tony's chest on the road. That thing was literally embedded in Tony's chest. Just press down like this, and everything will be fine. What is this operation? Co-author, is this guy a real necromancer? Yin Sen supported his glasses, his voice trembling slightly. Is this also magic? Potts pulled apart Tony's clothes, touched Tony's fairly strong chest carefully, and gradually relieved the anxiety on his face. After she was relieved, she faintly felt that something was wrong. As soon as she replayed what happened just now, her face suddenly became ashamed and angry, and she stepped on Tony's foot fiercely. Boss. Go back by yourself. This Fang Quan could cure Tony immediately, but he had to wait until he confessed his reluctance to start the treatment. Think about what Tony did. It is clear that these two people cooperate to act together. Asshole. Potts left with shame and anger. Tony saw it, said goodbye to Fang Quan in a hurry, and hurried after him. Fang Quan laughed out loud, admiring the appearance of this super-rich man running to find love. Fang Quan and Yin Sen were invited to sit in Tony's luxury car. Roddy was sitting on the co-pilot, holding the walkie-talkie and reprimanding the security team, and he was able to let the assassin kick Tony under his nose. After Roddy reprimanded his subordinates, he looked in the rearview mirror and at Fang Quan. Fang Quan noticed the gaze, raised his eyebrows, and looked at him. Roddy asked in a positive tone, "Is that person your subordinate? I was standing in front of you at the time, and that ninja flew past me. With that ninja's strength and skill, if he wanted to assassinate Tony, he would have 100 ways to die." Quote. But that ninja didn't. Coupled with what happened later, Roddy gradually came to a judgment. Roddy guessed that there is a high probability that Fang Quan arranged for Tony. Fang Quan was a little surprised. Your eyesight is very good. How did you find it? Luo Di said seriously. Among the people present, you are the only one with a strong murderous look and aloof eyes. It is reasonable for a person like you to have a powerful bodyguard. I just didn't expect that the Oriental Necromancer's bodyguard would be so powerful. They were all members of the Special Forces, so no one could notice that the ninja was by his side, and they couldn't even find out how the ninja disappeared afterwards. Fang Quan was a little surprised. The person who can become the leader of the flight crew really has two talents. Yin Sen kept silent. This was a fight between gods and gods. All he saw was a flash of black shadow, and Tony flew out. Roddy turned sideways and looked at Fang Quan with curiosity in his eyes. Why are you so close to Tony? Fang Quan waved his hand indifferently. I happened to meet it, so I grabbed it. You may not believe it, but I was also kidnapped by the Ten Commandments gang. Luo Di was stunned, bound in. Fang Quan leaned back slightly on the back of the chair, with a calm expression. Yes, that's why I ordered everyone in 10 rings to be killed. Luo Di was taken aback when he heard that. How could such an important and powerful Eastern necromancer like you be tied into it? However, combined with the information reported at the scene, Roddy knew very well that the members of 10 rings were all killed by knives. It's very ninja. After listening, Roddy nodded, and then respectfully took out his business card and handed it over. Fang Necromancer, please accept it. Such a powerful Oriental necromancer must make friends. I want to be a soldier for the rest of my life. Maybe I will encounter a situation where I am half dead. This is when the benefits of knowing a powerful Eastern necromancer are highlighted. Fang Quan looked at Roddy's hand, the smile on his face faded, and he became very indifferent. I treat Tony, and he uses the world's most advanced individual combat armor as a reward. Can you give me bring what? Roddy said seriously. I am a colonel of the Air Force, and I have access to the National Global Satellite Surveillance System, which can bring you the most critical military information. I believe that sometimes you need the official to solve some troubles and trifles for you. Quote. The corner of Fang Quan's mouth raised slightly, and he took Roddy's business card. Not bad. Fang Quan fiddled with the business card, let go and threw it behind him. An iron blue hand in the shadow reached out and grabbed the business card, then retracted into the shadow. Rhodey's eyelids twitched, and he knew how the ninja in black appeared. Fang Quan got a satisfactory result, so he closed his eyes and started to draw the lottery. Luo Di and Yin Sen also restrained their voices very wisely and kept quiet. The driver of the car was a soldier, and he looked straight ahead. Start lottery draw. Scope of the lottery: Qianlong World Adventures. Lucky draw reward: Cow Charm. Cow Talisman. Make the holder infinitely powerful. Mo. A bull roar resounded in Fang Quan's spiritual world, and an incomparably powerful sense of power spread throughout his body. Fang Quan can even clearly feel that his body is moving towards perfect metamorphosis, and the muscles under the necromancer robe are rapidly becoming perfect and shaped. At the same time, the effects of the two spells popped up in his mind. Horse Charm. Active. Heal all injuries. You can also restore things to their original best appearance. Passive. Regenerative healing factor. Cow Charm. Active. Consume mana to permanently increase strength. Passive. Body of perfect power. The simplest words introduce the most unpretentious yet extremely powerful spell power. Fang Quan opened his eyes, and there was a dark blue octagonal bullhead rune faintly floating in his eyes, which was rapidly fading away with the passage of time, and he smiled quite satisfied. Interesting. The passive effect of the bull charm is to bring the strength of the body to a perfect state. But this is not the limit of the bull charm. As long as the mana is consumed, the strength and physical fitness can be constantly enhanced. Fang Quan, as the leader of the Ghost Army, can communicate with the Dark Kingdom to absorb the dark power indefinitely, and can even absorb the dark magic power from the main plane. This means that as long as Fang Quan is willing, he can increase his strength without limit. Even if Fang Quan doesn't do anything, as the King of Darkness, the combination of the naturally growing magic power in his body and the bull charm will make him stronger. Fang Quan shook the palm of his hand, curious about his current strength. Is there any place nearby that can be destroyed? I want to test my strength. Roddy was a little surprised. Test strength? What exactly do you need? Fang Quan thought for a moment. It's hard enough. Roddy said without thinking. You can go directly to Tony's house. He has a semi-finished vibranium shield at his house. I have been staring at his good thing for a long time. Vibranium shield is known as the hardest metal in the universe. This is really hard, the top 3 super metals on Earth. Yin Sen listened to the black line on his forehead, and adjusted his glasses. Why are you so clear? Roddy was indignant. The last time I drank a bet, I obviously won the semi-finished shield, but that guy didn't remember it at all after he sobered up, and even told me to get out. Rhodey was thinking about that good thing. If that thing was transformed into a body armor or a weapon, it would definitely be a top-notch weapon. But Tony, the fool, wouldn't give him anything. Fang Quan looked at the route. Where are we going now? Roddy shrugged. His home. Looking at it now, with the grace of saving lives and the grace of the wingman, Tony will definitely be very happy to show off that shield. Fang Quan was in a happy mood, and changed to a more comfortable sitting position. Very good, very good. Because of the military control, the road was unimpeded, and it took less than 30 minutes for the group to arrive at Tony's luxurious and huge 3-story villa by the sea in the suburbs. As soon as Fang Quan got out of the car, he saw Tony and Potts in the car in front walking down talking and laughing. Potts was blushing and coquettish, and his attitude towards Tony had changed by huge amounts of compared to before. After Tony coaxed Potts to be happy, he bowed his head slightly and said a few words, then turned around, his face flushed, and he walked towards Fang Quan happily. Tony walked up to Fang Quan, his face full of gratitude. Thank you, you made me realize who the most precious person in my life is. Whatever you want, anything in this world, I am Tony, I can give it to you. It was the most human-like thing Tony had ever said in his life. Fang Quan laughed and said, then take out that vibranium shield at home, I want to try it out. Tony froze for a moment, then looked at Roddy. Roddy whistled and looked at the sky with his hands in his pockets, as if there were more than a dozen Blackbird fighter jets practicing in the sky. Tony rolled his eyes at Roddy, then turned his head to look at Fang Quan. Okay, but I don't think a piece of vibranium can be equivalent to my life, you can change it to a more expensive wish next time. Fang Quan saw that he misunderstood what he meant, but he didn't bother to explain, so he tried his hand first. After Tony learned of Fang Quan's wish, he immediately showed off his proud expression, and walked ahead, showing off the vibranium shield that he took to stand on the table. Hey, vibranium metal is the strongest in the world. Metal, and even has many powerful properties. No matter what you plan to use it for, it will be the best material on the planet. Tony raised his eyebrows, opened his arms, and looked proud. Definitely, in order to transform such a strong super metal, you need the most intelligent super genius on the planet, Tony Stark, and the assistance of his world's top 10 Stark Group research laboratory. Fang Quan's face was indifferent, and he didn't cooperate with Tony's performance at all. Look at your ignorance. When I grow into the ultimate Mephisto that swallows the entire universe into darkness, what is vibranium? Roddy snorted twice in dissatisfaction. This fool's favorite thing to do is to show off. Yin Sen, on the other hand, was shocked, holding his glasses. There is such a magical metal. Be sure to let me see it. Tony curled his lips in displeasure, feeling that Yin Sen was the only way to save face, and the indifference and truthfulness of Fang Quan's face really made him unhappy. After the intelligent scanning of the gate, Tony led everyone into a luxurious 3-story villa by the sea. Tony blew a whistle and summoned Jarvis. Hey, whitelist this cute guy in necromancer robes, he's my guest. A mechanical voice came from the roof. Of order, sir. Tony walked into the living room, thought for a while with a memory beyond ordinary people, opened his mouth slightly, and stood hesitantly in the living room. Hey, give me some time, I will definitely remember that stupid semi-finished product of vibranium was put there by me. Does it have long legs? I remember it was placed here as a table foot. Potts shook his head helplessly, turned around and went down the transparent bulletproof door beside him. After a while, when Tony was trying to prove to everyone that the vibranium shield ran away by himself, not his own memory, Potts came up with the vibranium shield. Tony was overjoyed when he saw it. Hey, my dear assistant has a brain with an amazing memory. Potts rolled his eyes, and didn't even bother to criticize his boss's habit of throwing things away. She handed the vibranium shield to Fang Quan. Fang Quan took it, weighed it, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. This vibranium semi-finished shield is really strong. Tony looked curious. Hey, Fang Necromancer, you are a necromancer, why would you want this thing? Couldn't the powerful men you summoned with magic not be able to meet your needs? Fang Quan played around for a while. Is there a convenient place to test the strength of my fist? I want to test it. Tony looked at Roddy like he was an idiot, in disbelief. He's going to test boxing strength. You sold my vibranium shield. If you can't get the vibranium shield, you don't have to. Testing boxing power with the strongest vibranium metal on the planet. The gym on my left is a normal boxing test for everyone on this planet. Roddy waved his hand innocently. How do I know? He just said to test strength. How do I know it will be boxing strength? Tony was speechless, so he had to explain to Fang Quan. Don't believe this fool's recommendation. If you punch vibranium, you will hurt your hand. Come on, turn right, and you will see a luxurious gym. There are places where you can test boxing strength, intelligent standards, and can meet all your needs. Tony thought for a moment, then added, if you don't know what to do with vibranium, I can make the lab work overtime and turn it into any weapon or armor you want. Fang Quan shook his head. No, I just want to ask, is it okay for me to test here? Tony smiled. No problem at all. Fang Quan nodded, stepped forward, pressed the vibranium shield into the wall, and waved for everyone to disperse. Tony's face changed slightly, and he realized that things didn't seem to be simple, and a kind of regret rose faintly. Hey, Fang Necromancer, I think. Roddy's face also changed. The walls of this guy's house are of first-rate standard. You just push the vibranium shield in with your bare hands. Yin Sen's mouth opened slowly, a certain nerve in his brain was splitting. Waterfa. Is the strength of your Eastern necromancers so terrifying? Fang Quan stood firm, inhaled, and pulled his right hand back slightly. A sense of terrifying power condensed on his arm, and the surrounding air and ground trembled slightly. Tony's face suddenly turned half pale. Fack. No, no, no. Don't fight here. Who would have thought of this? People like necromancers shouldn't be weak. What's with your bulging muscles? Fang Quan pretended not to hear, and punched down decisively. In an instant, Fang Quan's right hand disappeared from ordinary people's vision due to the extremely fast speed. Boom! The consciously controlled horror shockwave exploded in a fan shape, directly blasting all obstacles in front of Fang Quan into slag. Tony's seaside villa suddenly became a semi-seaside open-air villa, with gravel flying in the distance, like gravel rain from the sky. As far as everyone can see, a violent and powerful force destroyed everything, leaving only a clear and smooth gully. Half of the huge seaside luxury villa disappeared, and the alloy pillar at the broken place on the top of everyone's head was twisted and tilted upwards, enduring a force that it shouldn't have to bear for its identity. Fang Quan had a surprised expression on his face. I didn't expect it at all, it worked wonders. The authority blessing of the King of Shadows coupled with the spell, can unexpectedly erupt such a powerful force. Tony grabbed his hair with his left hand, his face was full of madness, and he pointed with his right hand to the half of the villa that disappeared. You are so surprised. You knocked half of my villa into the air. Roddy had a groan and didn't know whether to complain. 10 rings tied you in. Are you kidding me? When you punch down, half of the 10 rings will disappear on the spot. They tied you. Yin Sen was so frightened that his legs went limp, and he fell limply to the ground. He never expected that the person who sat face to face with him for so long would be a humanoid dragon. Potts was stunned, and stood there sluggishly. It was difficult for his brain to react for a moment, and his body fell into a state of rigidity because he was close to this terrifying force. After feeling sorry for his villa, Tony quickly calculated Fang Quan's strength and was shocked. How did you do it? Are you still human? This punch unleashed the power of a cloud bomb. Fang Quan snapped his fingers and asked the ghost soldiers to look for the vibranium shield. I just tested the strength briefly, don't panic, I think you won't mind if I smashed half of your Seaview villa. Tony's eyes widened, his left hand was covering his chest, and his right hand was pointing at the disappearing villa. He wanted to sing a song, but because Fang Quan had saved his life twice, he swallowed it forcefully. I don't mind. Definitely mind. I just came home. The guards went crazy, running in from the half-ruined side with hands and feet, holding weapons in their hands, and shouting Tony's name in their mouths. Tony had no choice but to step forward to disperse the guards and let them continue to guard the surrounding area. Looking at the ruins in front of him, Roddy feared Fang Quan's mighty power from the bottom of his heart. This is already an inhuman level. After Tony dismissed the guards, he turned around and couldn't help asking, Fang Necromancer, is this magic? Or what? Mutant. I've heard about mutant. But aren't most mutants some weak mutations? Fang Quan didn't bother to explain, but waved to Tony. Come here, I'll tell you something alone. Tony came over, and the others left consciously, and led by Potts to visit the flat ravine outside. Tony asked curiously, what's the matter? Definitely, don't tell me about my future. I just want to have a good time with Potts now. Tony suffered deeply from Fang Quan's evil deeds, and his mentality was not stable along the way. Whoever hears that their future is about to die or live, important relatives are on the verge of death at every turn, and turning points appear at every turn. This is such a high and low mentality that it exploded on the spot. Fang Quan rolled his eyes. No, I want to ask, can you disclose the blueprint of the Mark I to Obadiah? Question marks floated all over Tony's head. Why? Fishing law enforcement. Give me some time, I can get the important evidence in his office, and then solve this matter perfectly. Fang Quan snapped his fingers and said calmly, wait 3 minutes. Tony didn't know why, so he stood in front of Fang Quan and waited peacefully. After a while, 2 ghost soldiers appeared in front of Tony. The leader, Guiying, is holding a notebook and a USB flash drive, and his subordinates are holding cameras. The ghost holding the video camera showed how the leader ghost came to the president's office, how to turn on the computer, and how to copy files. The leader, Guiying, thoughtfully inserted the USB flash drive and opened the contents, which contained a series of illegal operations of Obadiah, violating the company's guidelines to become a warmonger, and evidence of supporting evil organizations such as 10 Rings. The corner of Tony's mouth twitched. It took your men 3 minutes to solve the group defense system, second only to the White House. Your subordinates make me lose face too much. Fang Quan thoughtfully corrected a point. These 3 minutes were spent on the road. Strictly speaking, I just went in and turned on the computer, and then copied and pasted. Tony tidied up his messy mood, glanced at the evidence, and couldn't hide the disappointment and pain in his heart. Hey, Tony sighed, and said helplessly, why did you ask me to give him the blueprint? Fang Quan smiled. You have to know one thing, I am a dark magician. A question mark floated over Tony's head, and then Fang Quan clasped his hands together, and said calmly, I like to give people hope, and then harvest their despair and grief. This will make me feel satisfied and make me stronger. Tony couldn't help asking back, so that's why you tortured my heart along the way. Fang Quan looked at him with contempt. Dark magician doesn't play with people's hearts, so what kind of dark magician is it? Tony wanted to speak but stopped talking and wanted to. Can't scold, this fool saved my life twice, made me embrace love, is a powerful healing magician and an idiot who smashed half of my villa with one punch. I can't beat him, he is still my benefactor. I can't scold. Tony finally chose Xiantubao and Kongshin. Okay, within 10 days, he will get the blueprint of Mark I, and then. Fang Quan showed a kind smile, then I will kill him. Tony wanted to spit all over the floor, and finally choked out a sentence. You are really a demon playing with hopes. He paused, then said unbearably, give him a good time, after all, he has taken care of me for more than 20 years. Although this uncle has been proven to be a beastly fool. But Tony finally had a little leeway. That is, give him a good time. Fang Quan shrugged. Okay, I just like to kill him in the strongest state. The mission requirement is to kill the complete Iron Overlord, and Fang Quan has no interest in this Obadiah. Fang Quan is only interested in things that can make him stronger and feel happy. Tony rolled his eyes and asked curiously, how strong is your recovery ability? Fang Quan raised his eyebrows. I haven't tested it in detail. But at present, even if I am blown to pieces, I can still recover. In addition to consuming mana to actively enhance the effect of the horse charm, the passive effect can also continuously restore itself. At least for now, Fang Quan has not encountered a situation where he cannot recover. Tony was surprised. Is it okay if there is a problem with the brain? Fang Quan shrugged. I haven't tried it. Tony nodded, half understood, with an idea in his mind. Fang Quan stretched out his hand. What about the reward for saving you? Tony stared at him blankly. What reward? Mark 6. I haven't even made a Mark 2 yet. Fang Quan looked at him like an idiot. 50 million or 60 million. You won't regret it, will you? Tony turned his head slightly, looked at the half of the villa that he had disappeared, hesitated to speak, so he took out his mobile phone and called Potts. Prepare a 60 million yuan consumption card for Fang Magician. You blasted half of my villa worth hundreds of millions, and I didn't say anything. I still care about this. Tony hung up the phone, with a look of helplessness on his face. What happened just now was so shocking, I forgot about it for a while. The bank card will be in your hand within 5 minutes. Fang Quan nodded in satisfaction and waved his hand. Okay, I'm going to play casually, you should do whatever you want. Tony rolled his eyes. Okay, I will definitely let Obadiah get the perfect Mark I blueprint. He bit the word perfect a little bit hard. Fang Quan didn't bother to talk about it, with his hands behind his back, humming a ditty, and wandering to Potts to ask for a bank card. Tony looked at his back, a gleam flashed in his eyes, and a small revenge plan full of wickedness was born in his heart. 10 days later, the research room on the basement floor of the Seaview Villa. Tony was manipulating the system panel with confidence, improving the blueprint of Mark I. Considering Obadiah's technical ability and the approximate scope of the scientist's ability that he can summon, he even reserved space for the strengthening of the steel mecha for him very intimately. Potts was sitting not far away with a sweet face, holding the gauntlet in his hand, and said in a gentle voice, Mr. Fang asked you to give Obadiah the blueprint of Mark I, and then have a life and death duel with him. This is the traditional cultural concept of the strong in the East? She looked at Tony's current job with doubts again. But, did he ask you to strengthen the performance of Mark I? What a strange request, what a strange Oriental necromancer. Tony's eyes were fixed on the completion of the drawing, and a smirk appeared on the corner of his mouth. Hey, my baby, you don't know how much despair he gave me before he let me find hope. I decided to prepare a harmless joke for him. Potts put his armor on the table, leaned over, and asked curiously, what joke? Tony's face was full of complacency. I strengthened the attack ability of the Mark I, and at the same time added a few lines of key codes here at the core layer. Mark I will gain a stronger combat ability, but will lose its attack ability when attacking Fang Quan's fatal area. Quote. Potts looked confused. What's the point of doing this? Doesn't this allow Fang Quan to be beaten but not die? Tony laughed loudly. This is the price he must pay for torturing my heart. This fool, today Tony must commit. Rage Mark I. Go. Bear my hope. Beat this vicious magician. Tony is very happy. This is the only chance he has to get rid of this vicious magician in so many days. Chapter 11. Obadiah got blueprints for the satanic armor and a version of the arc reactor too that Tony gave away. Obadiah quickly implemented plans for the production of the satanic armor, right under the large arc reactor. The scientist looked at the design drawing of the satanic armor and exclaimed, "This is definitely the world's first-class individual combat mecha, and it will be the most powerful individual combat mecha. This is an epic-making change. If paired with enough programming, these precious and powerful individual mechas will change the era of warfare. Strong industrial abilities. Eagle Kingdom will no longer need to send a large number of troops to fight hard and die in the backward third world. This kind of satanic armor only needs to produce a few more, and those backward third worlds can't resist at all." He smoked a cigar, his face full of mockery. Tony is so easy to deceive. As long as I coax him a little, he will obediently hand over the blueprint and reactor to me. However, after the satanic armor is produced, I will activate it and kill you. The youngest super genius, you will die on your favorite work. Obadiah knew that Tony hadn't discovered his plot to murder him, and the 10 rings were all dead, under Tony's powerful steel armor. But Obadiah also has concerns. Tony saw the company's munitions appearing on the 10 rings site with his own eyes. After returning, he strongly demanded accountability. Although he was prevaricated, this matter has already touched the sensitive nerves of this genius. If Tony continues to investigate, I'm afraid he will be found in about half a year. You must speed up. Obadiah showed a ferocious smile again. However, it doesn't take half a year, just half a month. I can eradicate you and get everything. The blueprints and the arc reactor are already in my hands. How can I lose? I just asked. Everything is under my control. How can I lose? ... The sun shines into the bedroom on the second floor of the luxury villa, and Fang Quan is deeply immersed in the corruption of the evil capitalism on beautiful models. After receiving 60 million yuan, Fang Quan directly bought a villa, spent a lot of money, spent more than 10 million yuan in one breath, and the upper-level rich people knew that he was a mysterious rich man who appeared suddenly. When he left the Seaview Villa, he also took a global limited edition sports car of Tony. He has a house and a car, and is worth tens of millions. Fang Quan didn't have to do anything, all kinds of high-quality chick beauties gathered around him. Fang Quan is also very generous. He is willing to spend money on every beautiful woman, without blinking his brows. When getting money is too easy, for Fang Quan, money is a number that can be changed at any time. In just a few days, many beauties are very happy to spend the spring night with Fang Quan, making Fang Quan enjoy different tricks every day. The task has changed, please pay attention to check. Fang Quan opened his eyes instantly, got up from the 2 beautiful models, sat by the bed, and opened the system window. Challenge mission. Kill the satanic demon armor king transformed by Tony Obadiah Stannis. Mission reward. Get a chance to specify a spell. Countdown 14 days, 23 hours and 59 minutes. A question mark appeared on Fang Quan's head, and he looked puzzled. What is this fool doing? Why did he become a transformed satanic demon armor king? Forget it, it's not important. The benefits after the task change are better. After killing Satan's demon armor king, the first choice is the dog charm that keeps youth forever, immortality, and makes the holder immune to all fatal injuries. With the dog charm, Fang Quan will truly shed his mortal body and become immune to fatal damage and death, stronger than the body of gods and demons. The power of the horse spell is immortal, and the dog spell is immune to deadly power. Combining these two, Fang Quan will be invincible. Fang Quan smiled slightly, very satisfied with this. A beautiful woman next to her let out a hum, opened her tired eyes, and saw the rich man Fang Quan sitting beside the bed. Fang Quan turned his head, smiled wolfishly, and jumped on him. The beauty hummed unbearably, and the big bed began to sway. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Fang Quan gave 1 million yuan to every beautiful woman who was as handsome as him, so that they would disappear by themselves and return to their normal lives. Fang Quan opened his hands, feeling the change in his strength. Thanks to the fact that he is the king of the Ghost Shadow Army, a lot of dark magic power flows in his body every day, and the magic of the cow charm keeps running passively, strengthening his body. Now, Fang Quan didn't need to actively catalyze his magic power, and he was able to punch half as much as last time. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell. The leader Guiying respectfully held the mobile phone and handed it to Fang Quan, who was naked and felt the magic power. Fang Quan glanced at Tony's phone and nodded slightly. The ghost of the leader connected immediately, and put it next to Fang Quan's ear. Fang Quan, something big happened. That group of investigation bureaus did a stupid thing. Fang Quan was running the dark magic power to activate the spell magic, and there was a dark shadow on his body, with a calm expression. What's wrong? Tony's voice was frantic. The Bureau of Investigation caught the snake's head along the snake's body. This snake's head has something to do with Obadiah. Obadiah speeded out the assembly process, and he is about to tear his face and massacre at the company. I'm really convinced by these idiots. Don't they think I don't know that Obadiah is behind all this? The actions of the Bureau of Investigation made Obadiah feel oppressed, forcing him to take a risky action to kill Tony and get the ultimate control of the Stark Group before everything can be salvaged. As long as Obadiah kills Tony before the dust settles, the Bureau of Investigation will find out, and in order to cooperate with the Stark Group, he must swallow the truth. Fang Quan calmly glanced at the time on the system panel. Countdown. 1 hour and 28 minutes. Don't panic, the massacre is still 1 hour and 28 minutes away. Oh, it will start in 1 hour and 27 minutes, you can now take a bath with peace of mind, change into a good outfit, drink a cup of coffee, and then have a conversation with Potts. A 3-minute duel. After all this work, put on your steel armor and arrive at the company, we still have 27 minutes to chat. Quote. Tony couldn't stop his surprise. Why are you so sure? Fang Quan opened his eyes and said, nonsense. Did you forget that I can predict the future? Tony was shocked. So you know everything that will happen in the future? Fang Quan clicked his tongue. It's a bit exaggerated to know everything, and it's just knowing about some big events. By the way, I also know that you transformed the Mark I, and then Obadiah transformed it into a satanic monster. I have to pay more interest than I expected to solve this matter. Tony's voice faltered. That. Hey, my good friend, you saved my life twice and my love, how could I harm you? Fang Quan laughed. But it doesn't include taking the opportunity to take revenge on me a little bit, right? At the beginning, he really didn't think in this direction, but after thinking about it with his toes, Fang Quan could think that Tony took the opportunity to take revenge on himself. Hey, oh, Jarvis, I told you not to misappropriate too many computing resources, my network card is broken. Beep beep. Fang Quan shook his head dumbfoundingly, expressing helplessness to this naughty Tony. He touched his chin, a little curious. By the way, what is the power of this satanic armor? Will it get me excited about fighting? Fang Quan showed an interested smile, his eyes sparkled slightly. Things are starting to get interesting. Stark Group Industrial Park, below the arc reactor. Obadiah's eyes became dark, and he punched the table. These fools found my subordinates so quickly. Time suddenly became very tight. Tony's father, this Howard, was well connected in both science and politics. With Howard dead, Tony inherited the legacy of those connections. Once their conspiracy to murder Tony is discovered, these Eagle Country elites will shoot themselves as soon as possible to protect Tony's long-term development. Things must be done before these people conspire. As long as Tony dies, everything will stop. The chief scientist trotted to Obadiah with sweat on his face, but a look of scrutiny flashed in his eyes. Sir, I found some redundant parts in the program design and mecha design. If the mecha is fully activated at this time, it will be too late to change it in the future. Obadiah said coldly. How long will it take to change these? The chief scientist shook his head. These places all involve the core part, basically we have to overthrow and start over, but this. Okay, shut up and activate the mecha. Obadiah cut him off impatiently. Overthrow and start over. I don't even know if I can live to the next day. You want me to wait another 2 or 3 years? The chief scientist opened his mouth, but he could only turn around and waved vigorously to signal to continue to start, but his face showed a hint of sarcasm. He knew that this design drawing, including the core part, was provided by President Tony. According to Obadiah's performance in the past few days, it is very likely that he wants to use this thing to murder Tony. When the chief scientist got the design drawings, he didn't understand why there were 2 redundant steps in the design. During the process of starting the satanic armor, he understood the magical effect of the 2 steps of design in an instant. One is to start from the program level. Once the satanic demon armor does some predetermined things, it will enter a downtime state. One is to start with the arc reactor. Once a certain frequency fluctuation that even he doesn't know sounds, the energy source supply effect of Satan's magic armor will enter the internal closed loop. Although the chief scientist didn't understand how it was done, he had already seen the general effect. Obadiah will die terribly. Just tonight, Obadiah saw that the eyes of Satan's magic armor became brighter and brighter, and the smile on his face became more and more rampant. Ha 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 ha, when I put on the armor, Tony, you will die a miserable death. Quote. The chief scientist quietly stepped aside and pulled his assistant. After the armor is activated, we will leave here immediately. The assistant was very excited when he saw that the satanic armor was about to start, and looked at the instructor in doubt. Boss, what's the matter? This is an epic-making invention. Why did we leave here? God, this is a great change in the field of warfare, and from now on, warfare will be changed by this great technology. Quote. Assistant is very happy, because this is the greatest military invention he has ever participated in his life. The Satanic Demon Armor King battle armor is worthy of the name of the Demon Armor King. After their bold modification, it has become the most terrifying individual slaughter Mephisto on Earth. Man missiles, Gatling, incendiary bombs, rocket power. It can be said that the Satanic Armor has integrated all the extreme equipment for individual combat regardless of the cost. The Stark Group is a war group, with the most perfect war equipment in the entire Eagle Kingdom. This is the greatest and most powerful individual combat armor. The chief scientist shook his head. You understand launch mechanics, but you don't understand people's hearts. Come with me and keep quiet. In the eyes of the businessman Obadiah, they are consumables. In the ensuing fierce confrontation, if they were killed, Obadiah would not even frown. The assistant was at a loss, but because of the unconditional trust of the mentor who gave him a house and sent mercenaries to save his life on the battlefield, he still gave up the moment of honor to celebrate, which was most likely the greatest moment in history. When the program was gradually started, the chief scientist took the assistant who had passed on the mantle, grabbed the suitcase and ran away. The chief scientist and his assistants had a smooth journey. When they left the entrance of the Science and Technology building, they saw President Tony and a young man in black casual clothes standing at the door, talking and laughing. President Tony was wearing a set of extremely exquisite golden red battle armor, and his mask was raised, revealing a handsome face. The black-haired young man was smiling, but his body exuded a sense of coercion, making the people around him unconsciously afraid of him. Fang Quan smiled faintly when he saw a bald, white-bearded old man leading a young man out. Tony followed Fang Quan's line of sight. The smile on his face faded by almost 100% in an instant, leaving only a hint of hostility. The chief scientist looked around from the corner of his eyes. The Industrial Technology Park, which was still lively in the past, has long since become deserted. Some black cars commonly used by agent organizations are parked around, and some plainclothes agents wearing tactical sunglasses are standing around, watching everything around him coldly. The chief scientist smiled wryly, but he didn't understand that this was a trick that President Tony deliberately set for Chairman Obadiah. Tony's eyes were slightly cold. Who are you? The chief scientist grabbed the assistant's hand, motioned for the apprentice to follow behind him, adjusted his clothes, walked over, and saluted. Mr. Tony, I am the chief scientist of Obadiah's Satanic Demon Armor Project. Fang Quan's eyes lit up. Oh, tell me, how about the killing ability of this Satanic Demon Armor King? The chief scientist explained calmly. There is no problem at all against tanks and fighter jets. Even if it is encircled by a large army, you can use the powerful maneuverability to quickly leave. The battery life is currently the top technology in the world, and ordinary weapons cannot fight against it. The chief scientist also took out specific data explanations very intimately, showing the powerful military combat ability of the Satanic Demon Armor King. Fang Quan raised his eyebrows slightly after hearing this. Indeed, if this thing flies, it will still be a little troublesome. After listening to everything, Fang Quan's only headache is that this guy is a bit troublesome to fly. Tony's eyes lit up immediately. I've been preparing for almost a month, and I've been waiting for your words. He whistled proudly. Hey, powerful magician, do you need me to give you a set of Mark III? Although it is not the strengthening version of Mark VI, I believe you need a set of armor from the technological age to help you complete challenge. Tony is very proud. Hey, finally caught the field you are not good at. Fang Quan glanced at him lightly. Really? I don't think I need it. If you don't say this, I'll have to ask you for a set. But as soon as Tony uttered these words, Fang Quan felt his desire to win and lose swelled. Tony was dumbfounded. Hey, wait a minute, Fang Magician, the second most handsome man in the world, I don't think it's necessary to give up the Mark III armor for weird ideas at this time. This is a work I stayed up all night preparing for you. Fang Quan rubbed his chin. Making a miracle happen, I think it will work. Either rely on powerful strength to jump up to achieve a short flight, or simply destroy this place and trap the Satanic Demon Armor King on the ground. As long as you have a lot of strength, there is nothing that cannot be solved. If there is, then use the magic power to activate the bull charm and punch him. Tony had question marks all over his head. What nonsense are you talking about? What works wonders? Fang Quan moved his wrist, and the muscles on his arm began to swell slightly. It's enough to make him unable to fly. Tony looked aggrieved. Do you allow others to help with this challenge? I think I can stop him from flying. With one punch from you, the expensive equipment in our industrial park, which is 10,000 times more expensive than gold, will explode. If I had known earlier, I would not have pretended. The villa can be rebuilt if it is gone. If the equipment in the industrial park is destroyed, it will take 3 to 10 years to get it back together. The price of this outfit is too high. Fang Quan has no interest in Tony's little things. Anyway, it is Tony who is heartbroken now, not himself. You're the only one who still wants to play tricks. Don't you think about it. Am I, Fang Quan, such an easy-to-handle person? Tony wanted to take this opportunity to get a little revenge. Fang Quan knew it well, so he also prepared a small revenge. Between friends, stop there. As for the loss, if it is a bit expensive, what does it have to do with me, Fang Quan? You were not a moth at the beginning, but if I killed the Iron Overlord with one punch, it would be over. You see, now that you have acted like a monster, I need 2 more punches to kill the Satanic Armored King. Wasn't it you who was heartbroken in the end? Hey. Some people just like to be mean. Seeing the two people's jokes, the chief scientist couldn't help worrying about his team, and raised his hand. Mr. Tony, this gentleman, can I send a text message to the scientific team and ask them to evacuate here? Soon, the flames of war will spread here. Scientists who don't even wear body armor will surely die a miserable death. Fang Quan glanced at the system time countdown, 8 minutes 01 seconds. Tony didn't answer, but looked at Fang Quan. This matter is led by Fang Quan, and Fang Quan should make the decision. No matter what decision Fang Quan makes, he will support it. Fang Quan waved his hands boredly. Say it, tell them to leave immediately. The chief scientist was overjoyed, bowed his thanks, and hurriedly took out his mobile phone to send a message to his team. The assistant was also very excited and kept bowing and thanking Fang Quan. Tony looked at Fang Quan unexpectedly. I thought you would be cold-blooded and heartless at this time. You can completely keep him silent. Fang Quan's eyes were calm. I am the king of the Dark Empire. What are you doing to embarrass some ordinary people? Is it interesting? Fang Quan thinks he has a big heart, so he won't abandon his body to embarrass these ordinary people. Tony looked at Fang Quan in surprise, as if he knew this magician for the first time. King of the Dark Empire. My God, this guy seems to be far more powerful than I imagined. The basement level of the arc reactor, in the forging area of the Devil Armor King. A scientist who received the text message picked up his mobile phone. His face was shocked, and he quickly covered it up, but hastily stabbed the person beside him. The scientist on the side looked at his companion unexpectedly, and then quickly saw the text message under the gesture of his companion. In less than a minute, all the scientists in the hall knew the text message from the chief. They looked at each other, only then did they realize that the chief and assistant had already run away at the speed of light. Everyone started looking for excuses to run at the speed of light. Chairman, my wife has given birth. I have to go to the hospital now. Chairman, my son was in a car accident and I have to go to the hospital. Chairman, my mother is dying, I have to go see my mother for the last time. At the beginning, Obadiah nodded and agreed. The plan has been completed, and there is only the last 2 minutes left, so there is no need to embarrass these scientists. But 3 or 4 people ran away with excuses, and Obadiah sensed that something was wrong, grabbed one of them, and said fiercely, "What happened?" The unlucky guy who was caught looked at his companions for help, and found that the companions were running faster one by one, and they didn't even notice that he was caught. The female student who has a good relationship with the unlucky guy hurriedly grabbed Obadiah's arm. "Chairman, it's Tony. Tony is at the gate of the Science and Technology building." Obadiah let go of the hapless man. His eyes were shocked. Why did he come here? The unlucky guy fell to the ground, was picked up by the female student, scrambled and ran out the door with the female student. Obadiah felt flustered and had no idea what was wrong with him. Didn't the Tony have a good time with the strippers at the villa? Why did you come here on a whim? Obadiah looked at the satanic demon armor king after the program was installed. His eyes were fierce. "No matter what you are thinking, Tony, today is your end." He went straight to the devil armor king Satan, and activated the auxiliary machine to put on his armor. The entrance of the technology building. Fang Quan waved his hand, telling all those who ran out to leave, so as not to disturb his next battle. The chief scientist was grateful, and then led his team to run away at light speed. The playfulness on Tony's face subsided and became serious. "The Devil Armor King has been activated, are you sure you don't need the Mark III armor?" Fang Quan felt his 15-day evolved body, which contained terrifying explosive power, and smiled confidently. "Then take out the Mark III. Tony showed joy, and hurriedly waved his hands behind him, asking the bodyguards to drive the truck over, and opened the rear compartment. "Hey, let me tell you, this is the most perfect invention in my world, unrivaled. A super armor that no one can break." The back compartment of the truck was opened, revealing a sci-fi mechanical aesthetic assembly platform, on which a set of black and gold steel armor was quietly placed. Fang Quan looked at the iron armor, raised his arm, and clenched his fist slightly. "Tony, brute, stop, what are you doing?" Boom. The truck vibrated violently and moved forward for more than 20 meters. There was a clear fist mark on the chest of the black and gold steel armor on the assembly platform. Fang Quan looked at Tony with disdain. "No one can break it." Tony felt his breath stuck in his throat. "What the hell are you doing? This is the biggest humiliation I have ever suffered in my life. And also, how the hell did you crack my battle armor with a punch from the air?" "Livestock." Fang Quan clicked his tongue. "Try to see if you can break through the defense. I can crack your suit with a light punch, and the Satan Demon Armor King is probably the same." Fang Quan felt that the next battle would be very interesting as he punched Tony's battle armor to pieces. Boom. Under the ground, a burst of terrifying crackling sounds constantly sounded one after another. The ground in front of the Science and Technology building bulged and exploded. A huge amounts of silver-white mechanical arms stretched out, and a strong voice came from the ground. "Haha, Tony, you were delivered to me like this, you were really a huge gift from heaven to me." Tony looked calm. After seeing Fang Quan's light punch to dry his armor, he felt that unless Obadiah genetically mutated into an alien creature that could survive in the universe, he would not be able to hold Fang Quan up close. Punch. The Satanic Demon Armor King broke through the ground and stood up. His red mechanical eyes exuded a terrifying light. Ha. Why are you wearing a battle armor?" Obadiah was surprised, not at all expecting Tony to come prepared. Fang Quan waved his hand lightly, signaling Tony to get out and not disturb himself from fighting. Tony watched the Satanic Armored King obediently standing 2 meters away from Fang Quan, shook his head, and backed away to open the battlefield. Obadiah's arrogant laughter came from Satan's Demon Armor King. Haha, my god, do you stupid Sakura Island dead man actually want to buy some time for your poor master to live? Tony, who had retreated 20 meters away, opened his mouth wide in shock. God, why in the world would some people despise themselves for living so long? Fang Quan smiled, and the smile became a little distorted. The Devil Armor King Satan stretched out his mechanical arm, and put his index finger in front of Fang Quan sarcastically, "Sick man of East Asia. Are you worthy of standing in front of me?" The smile on Fang Quan's face was already mixed with rage. Tony couldn't help but ran back another 10 meters. "Dear Papa Howard, your friend Obadiah is the most capable person I have ever met in my life who can prepare himself for death." Fang Quan stretched out his hand and grabbed the finger of Satan Demon Armor King, with a ferocious smile on his face. "I will make you regret coming to this world." This sentence, he used Chinese. Satan Demon Armor King was taken aback, completely unable to understand, where did this young man get the courage to beat his 68-year-old comrade? "If you say it was the boy Tony who came prepared to hit me, I still feel hopeful." "You, ooh." Fang Quan of rage grabbed the palm of Satan's Demon Armor King, raised it wildly and shook it wildly, throwing a violent wind. "Today you will die." The Satan Demon Armored King was picked up by Fang Quan like a car, and he was thrown 6 times, and there were gusts of wind whistling all around. Tony opened his mouth wide, and couldn't help but retreat with the surrounding agents and special forces. Everyone withdrew to more than 100 meters away, in what they believed to be a safe area, opened their mouths wide in unison, and exclaimed, "Oh my God!" The scene before them was so shocking that everyone had to marvel. A human lifted up a huge silver-white military armor more than 3 meters high, and swung it wildly like a car. The Devil Armor King Satan was dizzy from being thrown, and Obadiah inside felt a strong sense of dizziness, clutching the acceleration button tightly, trying to break free. Whoosh whoosh. Flame spewed out from the soles of the armor of the Satanic Demon Armor King held by Fang Quan, and the speed of rotation became even faster. Obadiah roared and struggled frantically, resisting the dizziness, and activated the missile between his elbows. Boom! Tony's Mark III raised its arms in an instant, and a pair of large solid alloy shields spread out on the mechanical arms, lying in front of it. Dang dang dang. The agents around were like chickens following an old hen, shrank behind Tony in fright. Countless missile fragments hit the alloy shield, making a crisp sound. Tony's heart pounded with fear. Guys, I think we have to run away. Otherwise God is going to call us to heaven." The agents nodded frantically, ran back in a hurry, quickly found a car or truck as a cover, and then poked their heads out to continue watching this horrific battle. Fang Quan's upper body was blasted to a bloody mess, but in the breath, the wound quickly healed, and he returned to a perfect muscular figure. The Devil Armor King Satan also took advantage of this powerful explosion force, and at the cost of damage to the mechanical arm and the protective breastplate, was blown away to a distance of more than 10 meters, and crashed into the second floor of the building. Fang Quan flexed his fists, smiling ferociously but kindly. "Interesting attack, you should increase your strength." The Satanic Demon Armor King shook his head, his dizziness weakened, he smashed the ruined wall in front of him with a punch, raised his mechanical arm, and a missile launcher rose from it. Obadiah was so angry that his eyes were red. When he was dizzy and fell to the ground, he didn't see Fang Quan's terrifying recovery ability at all. "I want you to die." There was a crack on the display screen in front of him, and the moment he raised his head to point at Fang Quan, he only saw blood on Fang Quan's body, but he didn't notice that there was no wound on Fang Quan's body. Tony raised an LCD player in the distance, and the Mark III was acting as a telescope, broadcasting the distant images on it. The agents clicked their tongues when they saw that Obadiah actually wanted to launch the missile. Is this a powerful mutant? God, with such terrifying resilience, you don't need to rest and relax your waist after fighting a beautiful woman all night. I also want this kind of recovery ability, which is the super ability that men dream of. Agents and Special Forces members are very envious of this. Society is hostile to mutants, but in their world management, with such a powerful ability, who cares if you are a mutant? Who would dare to offend such a powerful mutant? Didn't you see President Tony being polite to this mutant? This is a strong man who can crack the steel alloy battle armor with one punch. It's too strong. In the eyes of the agent and the Special Forces members, passionate admiration was ignited. Tony taunted enthusiastically. My God, he actually wanted to kill Fang Quan with the best close-range explosive missile of the Stark group. Obadiah, who was so stupefied, must have not noticed that the missile he just fired ended up only hurting Fang Quan, he himself. Fang Quan felt the hurt, and snorted coldly, "Interesting, the missile can actually hurt me. If it's just an ordinary missile, I'm afraid it's not enough to break one's own defense. The Satanic Demon Armor King should use custom missiles, and the damage of close-range explosions is a bit high. However, it is a bit high level." Fang Quan sneered when he saw that the angry Satan Demon Armor King was going to repeat his tricks. His eyes were slightly cold. The shadow on the ground in front of Fang Quan expanded rapidly, and the Demon Armor King Satan had already pressed the launch button, and the missile flew towards Fang Quan with jets of flames. The ghost of the leader flew out of the shadows, blocking the missile. Boom! The leader ghost shadow successfully intercepted the missile with his life, and his whole body exploded and turned into black magic energy to evaporate. The Satanic Armored King froze in place, completely unaware that a ninja would suddenly appear. But he didn't believe in evil. This time he moved the trigger and activated Gatling. Da 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 da. Fang Quan stood where he was, and a number of ghost soldiers flew out from the shadows on the ground around him, blocking all the incoming bullets as if they were dead. Countless ghost ninjas turned into black magic energy and dissipated, but they also blocked all attacks with the Wall of Life. Standing on the second floor, the Devil Armor King Satan roared, "Strange mutant." Tony watched it from a distance and exclaimed, "God, the one-man confrontation between magic and technology." The agent and the Special Forces team members were stunned for a moment. "Aren't these ninjas afraid of death?" "Hey, Mr. Tony said, these are magic." "Magic? Oh boy, is it the magic of the Eastern Necromancer? I have learned a lot." It was completely unexpected that such a terrifying individual combat mech would be so crushed by this young man. The Satanic Armored King stood on the second floor and stopped shooting. The red light in the mechanical eyes flickered slightly, just like Obadiah's current mood. "The longer the time dragged on, the less chance I had of winning." Fang Quan stood on the ground in front of the building, his eyes were cold, and his clothes were torn. And in the shadow behind, where Satan's Demon Armor King couldn't watch, pairs of blood-red eyes opened, looking at this powerful silver-white steel armor. After all, Obadiah was reluctant to part with power, gritted his teeth, and jumped down from the second floor with all his strength, and rushed towards Fang Quan. "The last time. Give it a try this time, and if you fail, run away." Hoo-hoo. The terrifying wind pressure descended, and the Satanic Armored King was pressed down like a hill, and flames spewed out from the jets behind him, and the extremely powerful propulsion gave him supreme crushing power. It was accidentally caught before. This time, as long as the power of the Satanic Demon Armor King is fully utilized, there is still a great chance of winning. Roaring, the Devil Armor King raised his right fist and smashed it down. With this punch, even a mountain can be smashed to pieces. Fang Quan didn't dodge or evade. With a ferocious smile on his face, "You are the only one who deserves to play power with me." In Fang Quan's eyes, there was a shimmering mark of the bull charm. He raised his right fist and pointed it at the Satanic Demon Armor King. The muscles on his right arm began to bulge slightly, and waves of terrifying power were converging towards his fist. Tony in the distance was startled, turned around and ran away. It seemed that this was an even more terrifying attack than last time. As soon as the agent and the Special Forces team saw Tony turn around and ran, they also ran away, not daring to turn their heads. Boom! The terrifying shockwave erupted, directly overturning everything behind them, including the car they had just used as cover. Shockwave blew away all the tactical hats and sunglasses on their heads, and even they were directly blown down by shockwave and rolled on the ground several times. When they looked back, they saw only a ruined wall. Fang Quan's fist landed on the profile of the Devil Armored King. And half of the steel body of the Devil Armored King of Satan has disappeared, and sparks are constantly emitting from the fracture. What also disappeared was the technology building above the second floor behind him. The arc reactor on the first floor was trembling slightly, and then gradually returned to calm. Fang Quan watched as the iron chest armor of the Devil Armored King Satan split open, revealing Obadiah, who was bleeding from all 7 orifices inside, and had fearful eyes. Obadiah's face was pale, and his voice trembled. I am willing to pay any price." Fang Quan looked at him and showed a kind smile, hee hee. The battle was over, and the idlers began to clean up the mess. SHIELD employee Phil Coulson, who had been watching from a distance, also popped up at the right time, holding a mobile phone and recording. Tony looked at the half-crippled and seriously injured Obadiah in front of him, frowned, but didn't say anything after all. Obadiah got out of Satan's demon armor king, knelt on the ground, panting, pressed the bloody handprints on the contract paper on the ground. I plead guilty, and I am willing to transfer all property under my name to Mr. Fang Quan. Quote. After pressing the bloody fingerprints, he raised his pale face and forced a smile. Mr. Fang Quan, I have already signed the contract, can you let me go? After actually facing Fang Quan and death, Obadiah only thought about how to live. As long as he survives, relying on his many years of experience, he can still make a comeback. The leader Guiying picked up the contract paper on the ground and handed it to Fang Quan. Fang Quan glanced at it and waved his hand. The leader, Ghost Shadow, threw the contract to Tony, then drew out the Tang Dao, and turned to Obadiah. Obadiah's face turned pale. Wait. I have other properties. You can't. You. With a flash of cold light, Obadiah clutched his throat in despair and fell to the ground. The light in his eyes quickly dimmed, and he died in a pool of his own blood. Tony looked at Fang Quan suspiciously. Fang Quan waved his hand boredly. Exchange it into shares and give it to me, and the proceeds will be included in the card. I am too lazy to participate in business. I only like money. Tony looked at the bloody handprints on the contract and smiled wryly. Some people are willing to kill their own nephews for the shares, but you don't even want to take a second look. The world is so ironic. Obadiah wants it all, no matter the cost. And this Dark King didn't even bother to touch this contract for a second. Fang Quan didn't bother to pay attention to the emotional Tony, but looked at the system panel. Congratulations to the host for getting a chance to obtain the specified spell. The Phantom of 10 spells appeared in Fang Quan's mind. Fang Quan didn't have the slightest hesitation, and directly chose the dog spell. With the dog charm, you can have an invincible defense in the world, and you will be invincible in the world from then on. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the dog charm. Dog charm. Active. Give others indestructible power. Passive. The host obtains an immortal body. Fang Quan felt that there was a powerful force in his body, and the density of his skin began to become terrifying, as clean and firm as smooth marble, and the Stark Group's customized missile attack might not be able to break through his defense. Regenerative healing factor. Combined with the immortal body, this is definitely the most invincible defense in this world. Fang Quan can even clearly feel that a kind of metamorphosis has occurred in his body, and he has successfully entered the mysterious realm that ordinary people can't imagine. What is currently known is that he has obtained an invincible body, and other effects are unknown. Fang Quan blinked his eyes and came back to his senses. He saw two agents helping to carry the broken armor of the Satanic Demon Armor King, but one of them was taking out a USB flash drive under the cover of another one, and was about to insert it into the neck of the Satanic Demon Armor King. Excuse. Fang Quan's eyes turned cold. Two ghost soldiers emerged from behind them, and instantly beheaded them with their knives. With a flash of cold light, the heads of the two agents rolled down to the ground like balls, blood spurted out, and the headless bodies fell to the ground. Shut up. The surrounding agents and special forces immediately pointed their guns at Fang Quan, their faces full of horror. They only saw the two black-clothed ninjas suddenly kill their teammates, and they didn't know what happened. Phil Coulson hastily put down his phone, drew his pistol and pointed it at Fang Quan. Mr. Fang, what are you doing? Tony looked at Fang Quan in confusion. What's wrong? Are the two of them planning to attack you? Fang Quan didn't bother to explain, so he pointed his index finger, and a few ghost soldiers came out of the shadows all around in an instant, and carried the two corpses over. The ghost soldier raised the hand holding the flash drive. Tony's face turned red with anger. Two small sights appeared on the back of the armor, and within a breath, more than 20 red dots appeared between the eyebrows of the surrounding agents. If these people don't give an explanation that satisfies him. Tony didn't mind being in an antagonistic relationship with SHIELD right now. Phil Coulson looked at that hand, dripping with cold sweat. Mr. Tony, Mr. Fang Quan, I have never received such an order. It is impossible for SHIELD to go around you to get this mech information. This is Tony's proud work. This move is to offend the Stark group, and it is completely unworthy. Fang Quan glanced slightly, and saw a half-covered tattoo on the wrist holding the flash drive. The ghost soldier noticed the Dark King's eyes and immediately pulled down his sleeves, revealing the full Hydra tattoo. After Phil Coulson's words of apology saw the Hydra tattoo, the apologetic smile on his face instantly froze. The faces of the surrounding agents also froze, and the atmosphere froze. The Special Forces members felt something was wrong, and silently distanced themselves from the surrounding agents. Tony felt something was wrong, and hummed slightly, "Fang Magician, what's the matter?" Fang Quan had a gloating smile on his face. The one who wants to bypass you to get the information is the Hydra organization. This organization has a long history and is the sworn enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D. Phil Coulson was so angry that his lungs exploded, his face was livid, and he suppressed his anger. "Mr. Fang, Mr. Tony, please give me some time, and I will give you a satisfactory answer." There was also a happy smile on Tony's face. "Okay." Although Tony and Fang Quan let go, the surrounding agents still tensed their faces and tensed their bodies. The corner of Phil Coulson's mouth twitched slightly. "Mr. Tony, is it convenient for you to remove this little red spot on my brow now?" Tony pretended to be enlightened. "Oh, is it? I forgot. Fang Magician, do you have anything else to say?" Fang Quan laughed loudly, snapped his fingers, and ghost soldiers appeared around, walking towards these agents with indifferent faces. Phil Coulson looked at the ghost soldier walking towards him. His face became ugly. "Sir, wait, I can explain." Fang Quan had a smirk on his face. "No, I'm just helping you identify traitors, won't it endanger your lives?" A ghost directly tore an agent's clothes abruptly. Tony's face twitched slightly. "For your identification method, do you need to take off your clothes and pants?" Fang Quan's face is serious. "Need." Just as Phil Coulson was about to struggle again, a cold light appeared on his neck, scaring him to raise his hands in a hurry. For a moment, he couldn't tell whether it was Fang Quan's real identification, or the real identification plus taking revenge. Or rather, both. Tony couldn't help persuading. "Why don't you save some face?" "Shua." A ghost soldier pierced the chest of two Hydra agents who tried to resist, and then tore his clothes to reveal the Hydra tattoo. The air became still. Phil Coulson's face became greener and greener. "All agents cooperate with the inspection, and all rebels should be shot immediately." 4 people. There were less than 20 agents, and 4 traitors were found in the blink of an eye. This is so unbearable. Since when has S.H.I.E.L.D. been infiltrated to 1/5 by these rebels? Fang Quan shrugged. "Look, it's not me taking the opportunity to retaliate now, but the agent head asked for it." With the considerate help of Fang Quan, another Hydra traitor was screened out on the spot. Phil Coulson was too angry to say anything. Tony clicked his tongue. "Hey, so, our current enemy is Hydra." Fang Quan looked indifferent. "Your enemy is Hydra, they are after you, not me." "It's Hydra who stole your Warframe data, not mine, so what does it matter to me?" "Hydra, that rubbish mortal organization, dare to offend me. Can they find death?" Tony was startled. "Aren't we good friends?" Fang Quan. "I need to pay more." Tony. "In the coming year, there will be high-quality beauties waiting on your bed every week." Fang Quan showed a satisfied smile. "Deal, this is the power of immortality. You have obtained the ability of immortality and good recovery ability. Although it is not as orthodox as mine, it is enough for you to face most crises." Fang Quan patted Tony on the shoulder, bestowing the power of immortality on him. Immortality is more towards immortality and no weakness, but not as powerful a recovery ability as regenerative healing factor. The reason for granting Tony immortality is simple. Tony can constantly bring both visible and invisible benefits to himself. Tony was dumbfounded. "Wait a minute, this is immortality. Why don't I feel it?" Fang Quan put his finger on Tony's chest and smiled at him. Tony felt bad. "Wait a minute. I'm not done yet." Boom. The battle armor at Tony's heart exploded, his chest exploded, blood flew, and half of his heart disappeared. When Tony lowered his head, he could even see the horrific injuries on his own wounds, and an extreme sense of instinctive panic swept over his heart. Swipe, swipe. Under everyone's horrified gaze, the flesh and blood on Tony's body flew backwards as if time had flowed back, returning to its original position. Phil Coulson opened his mouth wide, looking at the scene in front of him in shock. My God. Tony touched the damaged part of the broken battle armor. His body was intact. He was dumbfounded. What the hell? His legs gave way and he fell directly towards Fang Quan. The ghost of the leader appeared in front of Tony like a ghost, and held him up. Tony was breathing heavily, feeling dizzy, his expression shocked. After all, no one can remain calm after seeing their heart explode, except for Fang Quan, a pervert whose willpower is as strong as an atomic nucleus. Fang Quan smiled kindly. Don't panic, dizziness is normal, you will get used to it if you die a few more times. Tony's legs were weak and his voice was slightly trembling mixed with shock. Are you immortal? Phil Coulson, the surrounding agents, and the Special Forces members looked at Fang Quan in shock and horror. One touch of that finger, and Tony became an immortal being. This is beyond the common sense of most people. Fang Quan clicked his tongue. Yes, what's wrong? After getting the dog charm, he can live to the end of the universe's lifespan without worrying about lifespan anymore. Tony opened his mouth wide and looked at him in shock. Then how many years have you lived? Should I call you Grandpa Fang Quan? Fang Quan turned his head away in boredom, didn't bother to pay attention to this question, turned and left, and waved his hands behind him. Put the money into the card early, I'm going on vacation. When there is no task, Fang Quan feels that he can enjoy life perfectly instead of running around. Fang Quan walked into the shadows and disappeared. The ghost soldiers all around also disappeared into the shadow of the ground and left. The leader Guiying supported Tony, his figure gradually faded and disappeared. Tony stood where he was, feeling like he was dreaming. He stretched out his hands, feeling his body gradually getting stronger and returning to the peak state of his life, which made the dream even more unreal. So, immortality. Phil Coulson walked up to Tony, his expression still shocked. Mr. Tony, do you know him? Why does such a powerful person appear? Immortal body, powerful enough to crush the strength of human advanced technological steel armor, a constant stream of first-class soldiers. Not to mention, he also claimed to be the king of the Dark Kingdom. Why did such a lofty existence suddenly appear in their sight? Tony thought of the prophecies that Fang Quan had told him, and smiled wryly. He said that there is an alien creature Thanos who has gathered the 6 most powerful gems in the universe and wants to destroy half of the life in this universe, a few years later. And I became the hero to stop Thanos, and finally died in this disaster. Quote. Phil Coulson felt like listening to a fairy tale, with question marks all over his head. Is it true or not? He can still prophesy. Tony was helpless. I also hope he is nonsense, but he. Forget it, there is one thing that can prove whether his judgment is right or wrong. You ask your director Nick, is that the name? He said that the tesseract that director Nick hid was the space gem, one of the 6 gems. Quote. Phil Coulson's face was stiff. What? As an agent of the same period as Nick Fury, he has some simple understanding of this matter. Tony recalled another piece of fragmented news from Fang Quan's few words. By the way, he also said that you can study the tesseract's energy to make weapons. Don't open it, it will attract the attack of the alien army. Phil Coulson looked worried. Recently, colleagues in the weapons department did bring up this topic, vaguely mentioning the topic of energy weapons. This can't be true. Phil Coulson didn't care about anything else. He immediately took out his mobile phone and dialed the dedicated emergency number directly. As a high-ranking old agent, he has this privilege. Soon, the call was connected. Nick Fury's voice came from the phone. This is Director Nick. Phil Coulson, what happened? Phil Coulson waved his hand to make the other agents back, pressed his hand on the mouth of the wheat, and said in a low voice, Director, is there a Tesseract research plan and related energy weapon research plan in our bureau? Nick Fury's voice was slightly surprised. How did you know about this plan? Phil Coulson smiled bitterly. Mr. Tony told me, this is Mr. Fang Quan's prophecy. Please spare an hour, I will arrive at the bureau in 30 minutes. Don't tell me that SHIELD's top secret plan is now so rotten that everyone knows about it. Phil Coulson added helplessly. Not yet, but. Director, you are in big trouble. Mr. Fang Quan said that if we activate the Tesseract, an alien army will attack the Earth. In the next few years, there will be an alien named Thanos, star life to wipe out half of the life in the universe. Come back and report this right now. The phone was hung up in a hurry. Phil Coulson's face was surprised. Tony raised his eyebrows. your director is very familiar with aliens. He didn't say you were talking nonsense. Phil Coulson was dumbfounded. I was surprised by this too. I thought I was going to be treated like a war trauma patient. The corner of Tony's mouth twitched. Am I really going to save the world? At this moment, Tony realized how outrageous Fang Quan's predicted ability was. Is my future really very impartial? Phil Coulson was stunned, maintaining his mobile phone. My God, the alien Thanos who killed half of the life in the universe will really come. Tony said in a heavy tone. Although I thought it was outrageous before, and I was dubious about it, but seeing your director's attitude, I think you need to implement this matter. Immortality is obtained by oneself. Now it's not that hard to accept that an alien Thanos who kills half the life in the universe pops up now. Tony's face was complicated, and he began to seriously consider what he would give Fang Quan in return. Such a greedy, lustful, immortal, unprofitable, and manipulative king of darkness, what else does he need? Tony didn't really think that giving Fang Quan a beautiful woman every week would cancel the gift of immortality. Phil Coulson was paralyzed. He thought of the director's 10,000 reactions, but he never expected that the director would be so anxious to ask him to go back and report. The two didn't want to say any more, bid farewell in a hurry, and went back to their respective homes. Shield, Office of the Director. Nick Fury's face was dark. With his hands on the desk, he felt that things were getting more and more outrageous. After Captain Marvel left Blue Star to maintain the order of the galaxy, this is the second time he has heard the term alien army in many years. The last time an alien army invaded the Earth was almost 20 years ago. Boom boom. There were 2 knocks on the door, and Phil Coulson stood at the door with a heavy face, holding some folders and a notebook in his hand. Close the door, please elaborate. Seeing Director Nick's attitude, Phil Coulson felt that the matter was more serious. Phil Coulson looked nervous, and reported the information collected from the Intelligence Department and Tony in order of importance. Director Nick touched his smooth head with both hands, and his head hurt. Immortal King of Darkness. Phil Coulson immediately turned on the video of Tony's heart explosion, which was still hot, and Fang Quan's fighting video next to it. When Nick Fury saw it, he was already hovering on the edge of numbness. It's actually true. As long as you live for a long time, you can see the alien army invading the Earth for the second time. And I can also see that on my own planet, there is such an outrageous strong man reappearing in the world. Nick Fury panicked with a headache. So, because of Thanos, the Dark King reappeared. Phil Coulson hesitated for a while, then shook his head. I don't know, all his behaviors are based on his mood at present. Promises and oaths are worthless in his eyes. There is only one person that he values very much at the moment. Fang Quan said he didn't care about Tony, but after Tony paid the price, he still gave him the ability to live forever. Phil Coulson believes that Fang Quan would only leave this person scratching his head, literally, if it were someone else. Because of the change in the 2 agents, Fang Quan killed as soon as he said, without leaving any room for maneuver. In his eyes, it doesn't matter at all whether SHIELD or Spear Bureau. The corner of Nick Fury's mouth twitched. Tony. Phil Coulson nodded. Yes, the Dark King said that Tony is the key to saving this disaster, and he is bestowed with the ability of immortality. Nick Fury was silent for a while, and asked, didn't the prophesied Tony die in the end? The corner of Phil Coulson's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but gasped again. In other words, the amount of information is huge. At this moment, Phil Coulson thought of too many possibilities. Nick Fury clasped his hands together, put them on the table, and said solemnly, find his residence, I need to talk to him in person. Phil Coulson hurriedly found out the location of the mansion that Fang Quan bought. Nick Fury looked at Fang Quan's address, tapped his fingers on the table unconsciously, and picked up the microphone. Tell the Tesseract research team to give them a vacation to rest and suspend their current work. Tesseract has attracted alien armies before, and this time it may also attract alien armies. Listen to people's advice and have a full meal. Nick Fury is happy to listen to some important suggestions. Phil Coulson hesitated, then. Thanos. Nick Fury pulled out a document from the folder on the table. If the Tesseract research can be suspended to delay the occurrence of this disaster, I would be happy. However, I am afraid that the Thanos disaster he mentioned may have other reasons. I will go and ask myself, you go and investigate what is going on with this big guy that the military is tracking recently. Phil Coulson took the file, looked at the huge green humanoid monster on it, and asked, "Is this a mutant?" Nick Fury said in a deep voice, "No, it's not mutant. I suspect that the military's genetic research program has gone wrong. Stop them before the problem becomes a disaster. As ordered. Fang Quan's mansion is located in the suburbs of California. Challenge mission. Suppress Rage's Hulk. Challenge reward. Number of draws +1. Fang Quan put his arms around the beauty, lay on the recliner, raised his eyebrows slightly. Huh. Is it so lively here? Is it going to happen so soon? Fang Quan played with the beauty's figure, thought for a while, and continued to lie down. The sky is big and the earth is big, so I'll do it after I'm done. It's not my person who died, it's none of my business. The leader ghost came out from the shadow on the ground, knelt respectfully in front of Fang Quan, and reported the application to Fang Quan. Fang Quan checked the scene in the leader's mind, and was surprised. Director Nick. Phil Coulson agent. What are these two people doing here? Forget it, it doesn't matter, come in and talk. Let them in. Fang Quan waved his hands lightly, and continued to enjoy the beauty with his arms around her. The entrance of a luxury villa. Director Nick looked at the black-clothed ninja standing in front of him, his eyelids twitched, and he faintly felt a strong sense of threat. This is the perception ability condensed from his decades of combat experience. The walking posture and stride distance of these black-clothed ninjas are perfect, without any waste. Even when reaching out, the other hand is placed by the side, maintaining the ability to kill at any time. Director Nick couldn't help cursing in a low voice. I believe this guy is the King of Darkness. Such a powerful black-clothed ninja was actually used to watch the gate, and these guys with blood-colored eyes and iron blue skin were willing to perfectly execute these orders. Depend on. Such a perfect ninja is comparable to a level 9 agent. You used to look at the gate. Shua. A cold light flashed from the corner of Nick Fury's eyes. A ghost soldier was putting a knife on the neck of a strong man sweeping the street. The ghost soldier looked at Nick Fury with indifferent eyes. Nick Fury's eyebrows twitched. Retreat 100 meters, don't get close to here. How did this group of people see through the disguise of the 8th level agent? The agents who received the order looked at each other in blank dismay, and could only give up their duty of protecting the director, retreated 100 meters, and stood silently and horrified at the luxurious villa from a distance. Nick Fury tidied up the corners of his clothes, and smiled wryly at the corner of his mouth. I've already been at a disadvantage before we meet. Phil Coulson felt his scalp go numb. Director, this Fang Quan is terrible. Nick Fury nodded helplessly. Yes. Just revealing the tip of the iceberg is scary enough. Watching the door, the ninja with level 9 strength can instantly kill my level 8 agent bodyguard. Gone. The Dark King is amazing. The luxurious and heavy Western-style gate was opened, revealing a wide and straight avenue of patterned blue bricks, and on both sides of the road stood 2 neat rows of ghostly soldiers holding tang knives and straight waists. The ghost soldiers stared ahead. Their blood eyes were cold and ruthless, like human sculptures, exuding a murderous aura. Nick Fury looked at such a luxurious lineup, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. The Dark King is really amazing. Mada, this lineup is really eye-catching. Give me such a group of 9-level agents. I still have to worry about strategic defense issues. The name of the organization can be directly changed to God Black Zeus Bureau. Phil Coulson's eyelids twitched wildly, and at this moment he fully realized the weight of Fang Quan's words about the King of Darkness. There are so many world-class combat powers in Fang Quan's place that they can serve as a guard of honor. Nick Fury and Phil Coulson were in such a chilling welcome team, and followed the leader, Ghost, to the swimming pool with a heavy expression. No matter where they went, there were black-clothed ninjas moving around with clean movements and cold, ruthless eyes. There are patrol teams, there are those who plant flowers and weeds, and there are people who behead each other to exercise their skills. What the hell? What the hell is this? Nick Fury and Phil Coulson watched in shock as the ninjas in black beheaded each other on the lawn. The beheaded ninja in black will explode into a ball of black aura, and after 2 seconds, the ninja in black will come out of the shadows and continue to slash with his companions. The corner of Nick Fury's mouth twitched. It seems that it's not just Tony who got the power of immortality, but also the men of the Dark King. Grass, the power of immortality is really easy to use. If I had this ability, level 9 agents could be mass-produced. Phil Coulson is numb. He used to think that this Dark King was ruthless and used his men as consumables. Only now do I know. The subordinates of the Dark King are the top combat forces who are immortal and immortal. The two people had complicated expressions and even more complicated emotions. Their eyes were entangled and envious, so they followed the leader ghost to Fang Quan. The leader ghost slightly emitted a dark wave, and asked the Dark King for instructions that the person had brought it. Fang Quan touched the beauty's perfect body, didn't even bother to lift his eyelids, and squinted slightly to feel the dark elements that surrendered to him all around. Nick Fury coughed lightly. Hello, mighty Dark Lord. His subordinates are immortal, and this powerful Dark King probably lived for an unknown number of years. Phil Coulson behaved obediently in front of the human form recorder. His eyebrows were pleasing to the eye, and he didn't dare to make a sound. Fang Quan narrowed his eyes lazily. Say it straight. Nick Fury got straight to the point. Dear Lord of Darkness, I have suspended my research on Tesseract. Will Thanos not come to Blue Star? Fang Quan couldn't help laughing. Didn't you read the information? There are 6 infinite gems, Tesseract is just one of them. For the supreme power, Thanos will definitely come to the Blue Star and kill half of the life in the universe. Nick Fury can't understand. Why would he kill half the life? Fang Quan lazily said. Because his crush is the goddess of death, this powerful titan is still a single-minded person. In order to win the attention of the goddess of death, he will do everything he can to complete this matter. Nick Fury was dumbfounded. This kind of person is actually a love brain. Fang Quan felt that Nick Fury's description was very interesting, and turned his head to look at him. Interesting, so relying on the power you have now cannot prevent Thanos from coming. But you don't have to worry about it now, there will be no problems for the time being. Nick Fury looked heavy. How can I be at ease in the face of an enemy who can destroy half of the life in the universe? Fang Quan chuckled. Because there is another cosmic supreme powerhouse on this planet who possesses the power of time and space and whose strength is comparable to that of Thanos, Ancient One Magician. Thanos will not come here until her lifespan reaches the end. Challenge the dignity of this strong man. Nick Fury had a quick mind and smiled wryly. So, this Ancient One Magician has less than 10 years left to live. According to the Dark King, Thanos will naturally come after the death of Ancient One. Fang Quan clicked his tongue and was too lazy to answer. Nick Fury half kneeled on the ground with an extremely sincere expression. My lord, I beg you to protect this planet once, and I am willing to pay any price. The immortal King of Darkness, the supreme power, is the key factor in determining the outcome of the battle. Fang Quan looked at him sarcastically. I am the King of Darkness, not the King of Light. Get out now while I am in a good mood. Nick Fury raised his head in despair, opened his mouth, and could only stand up helplessly. Phil Coulson could only sigh helplessly. Fang Quan thought of another incident and snapped his fingers. By the way, do you know the Hulk? When Nick Fury thought about it, he really didn't know. Isn't this the document I read before I came here? He looked at Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson hurriedly understood, took out a few documents from the folder he carried with him, and handed them to Fang Quan. My lord, please take a look. Fang Quan glanced at it casually, feeling good. Yes, it seems that you are still useful. Where is this? Phil Coulson hastily explained. This is Carleton University, where we found clues about this big green man. Fang Quan smiled playfully. Since you want to stop Thanos, then I will give you a chance to stop the interference of those ants in the military and create a quiet fighting environment for me. After defeating the Hulk, I will give you an opportunity to recruit this powerful man who has unlimited power, can become a world destroyer, and is known as King Hulk. Nick Fury frowned subconsciously, but quickly relaxed his brows. Okay, I'll do it now. It was difficult, but he had to do it. World Destroyer, this sounds very powerful. The tension on Phil Coulson's face faded a little. As long as the Dark Lord can ask, there is still hope in this matter. 20 minutes later, General Ross was so angry that he slammed the phone on the operating table on the combat command vehicle near Carleton University. Nick Fury, how dare this mere agent boss control me? The secretary looked shocked. General, what's wrong? Ross stood up angrily, pacing back and forth. The Super Gene project was leaked, and this dog knows Nick smelled it, and he told the president nonsense that he could solve this problem perfectly. Our Hellfire missiles can't even break Banner's skin, what can he do about it? Quote. Now, after finally catching Banner's track, but at this time being meddled by that agent leader, this feeling is too bad. Secretary. Then, General, what shall we do next? Ross sat down with a gloomy face. Everyone is on standby. I want to see how this agent leader pulls this destructive crazy monster out of this large university. Ross is hugely popular, not only because of Nick Fury's intervention, but also because this crazy monster hijacked his daughter Betty with love. After the secretary listened to the order, he hurriedly communicated with S.H.I.E.L.D. His face was very shocked. General, they will arrive here in 10 minutes. For such a serious matter, they still have 10 minutes to hurry. Ross was so angry that he exploded on the spot and yelled, Nick Fury, if something happens to my daughter, I want you S.H.I.E.L.D. to be buried with me. He paced back and forth, his face flushed, and his snow-white hair stood on end like an angry white-haired Lion King. In rage of the white-haired Lion King Ross, time passed quietly, and it was 10 minutes later. The sound of a helicopter sounded in the sky, and a helicopter landed near the combat command vehicle. The rage on Rose's face slowed down slightly, his eyes moved slightly, and he thought of his poor daughter, and hurriedly said, bring all the information about Banner. The secretary hurriedly handed over all Banner's materials. Ross hurriedly opened the car door, tightly holding a stack of documents and trotting towards the helicopter. He saw Nick Fury, a high-level agent, a young man in high-level casual clothes, and Tony Stark, with whom he had a military project. The reason why Tony Stark came was because his exclusive helicopter was the fastest and most comfortable, and it was requisitioned by Fang Quan along the way. Ross went straight to Director Nick, with a slightly sad face, handed over the information in his hand, and softened his tone. I really hate you, a scum who meddles in military projects. But, no matter what, help me daughter, my daughter cannot stay with that monster. For his daughter Betty, General Ross, who had been tough for most of his life, spoke in the softest tone of his life. Nick Fury took the information and scanned it, his face slightly embarrassed. King Fang, Hulk and General Ross's daughter are in a relationship. I don't know if this is true or not, but now, Betty must be beside this monster warrior. Nick Fury immediately passed the information to Fang Quan, but Fang Quan did not answer. Fang Quan looked in the direction of the university, his eyes were slightly surprised, and his spiritual power had already felt a strong gamma energy of life. Banner has evolved to this point. Ross saw Nick Fury's actions, his eyes were slightly sharp. Nick Fury, who is this? Nick Fury introduced Fang Quan in a respectful tone. The immortal king of darkness, Master Fang Quan. Rose feels outrageous. Nick Fury, are you hypnotic ability? What the hell is going on? Fang Quan raised his hand and pressed down slightly. The will of the Dark King descended on this place, and the surrounding streets became darkened in an instant. The line of sight has not been affected, but everyone inexplicably feels that they can't see clearly the surroundings in the distance. Rose instinctively felt the threat of death. His hair stood on end. His hands were on his waist, his mouth was tightly shut, and he stared at Fang Quan. Fang Quan was in a good mood because he found a surprise. Get rid of your troops, ordinary missile attacks can no longer threaten this green guy. Ross looked at Fang Quan in shock. No, how is this possible? I was prepared. Fang Quan smiled playfully at him, including Hellfire missiles. Ross's eyes widened and he turned to Nick Fury. Nick Fury shrugged. Well, this Dark King still has the prophesied ability. General Ross was a little dumbfounded. Could this be mind reading? After Fang Quan shrouded his mental power for 4 weeks, he snapped his fingers, transfer everyone. Swipe, swipe. Bloody eyes opened in the shadows of buildings, the shadows of people's feet, and the shadows of the sides of cars. Ninjas in black quickly flew out of the darkness, suppressing and dragging the person in front of them into the Dark Kingdom, and transferring them several kilometers away. General Ross watched the scene in front of him twitching, and began to believe Nick Fury's absurd words. Super mutated monsters have appeared, and an immortal king of darkness has emerged. It's still so hard to accept. Caledonian University, Science Laboratory. Bruce Banner was observing his own blood samples with a microscope, while his girlfriend Betty was standing aside with her shoulders folded, her face slightly flustered. Betty waited anxiously. Banner, how is it? How are your cells? Since the last experimental accident caused Banner to absorb a large amount of gamma rays, Betty has been worried that he will suddenly explode like the previous nanomedicine experiment subjects. Banner slowly raised his head, his face blank. What is this? What has my body turned into? Why is it able to absorb gamma energy and become a mutant-strengthening green cell? Seeing Banner's dazed look, Betty stepped forward and hugged his neck from behind him in distress. It's okay, I will be with you, I will always be by your side. Banner raised his hand and touched his girlfriend's arm. The bewilderment on his face faded a lot, and his expression calmed down a lot. It's okay, I won't explode like a frog. Look, I'm alive and well now, aren't I? Betty couldn't help but her eyes were red. She lowered her head and sobbed. I've had nightmares for several days. I'm afraid that you will leave me. Don't leave me, Banner, please. Banner's expression suddenly softened, and he was about to comfort his girlfriend, but his eyes suddenly became sharp, as if he could see into the distance through obstacles. Banner was taken aback, not understanding why he had such a subconscious reaction, but the feedback from his five senses surprised him even more. Banner clearly felt that his eyes ignored the obstacles and saw ninjas with iron blue skin, blood-colored eyes, and wearing black combat uniforms galloping out of a pitch-black world, chasing students and teachers quickly dragged into the pitch-black world, fleeing far away. Banner was shocked. If this is not an illusion, then does he have the visual ability to see another dimension? However, the originally lively environment around quickly became quiet. Banner stood up abruptly, suppressed the panic in his heart, and asked for confirmation. Betty, is it quiet around here? If my perception is fine, then I'm in for a big deal. Betty wiped away her tears and listened slightly, but she could hear needles falling all around, but there was not a single sound, not even the chirping of birds, cats, or dogs on campus. Betty felt an inexplicable panic. There is no sound at all. Banner, what's wrong? Swipe, swipe. In the shadows of the room, pairs of blood eyes opened, and ghost soldiers appeared around Banner and Betty as if teleporting. Banner felt a terrified rage, an irrepressible rage waking up inside, like a beast about to burst out of its cage. Hey, Hulk. Hulk wants to protect her. Banner felt this powerful force, turned his head to look at his panicked girlfriend, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw a large number of black-clothed ninjas around him. Banner felt that the rage in his body was increasing rapidly, and his eyes were full of nostalgia. No matter what this power is, no matter what price I have to pay, as long as I can protect my girlfriend, I am willing to accept any price. I love you, Betty. Betty turned her head in surprise and looked at Banner, but saw the deep nostalgia in his eyes. Betty's sixth sense is triggered and she senses that Banner is going to do something, sacrificing herself. Panic spread on Betty's face. No, Banner, don't leave me. Banner stared deeply at his girlfriend. The rage in his body instantly swallowed his consciousness. Everything around him quickly moved away from him. His consciousness and soul seemed to be imprisoned in an invisible cage. This is where. Betty watched in horror as Banner's skin turned green in the blink of an eye, and his body rapidly swelled to more than 3 meters, and continued to expand. Boom! The huge green body more than 5 meters high pierced the ceiling. Roar! Hulk! A huge amounts of roar resounded through the entire scientific research building. After Hulk woke up, he glared at the ghost soldiers around him. The ghost soldiers stared at Hulk with indifferent blood eyes, and drew flying darts out of their hands. With a glance, Hulk realized that these black-clothed ninjas were coming for him, and had nothing to do with Betty or Banner. Hulk looked towards the far flower bed on the campus, where there was a person exuding a terrifying, frightening, and chilling aura all over his body. Hulk raged. The movements of his men were not slow. He smashed his fists furiously, and the shockwave broke out, blasting and killing all the ninjas in black around him. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying shockwave blasted all the ninjas in black into black aura in an instant. Hulk's anger continued to erupt, daring to threaten Banner and Betty. This man must die. Hulk attack. Rage Hulk jumped up, crashed through windows and walls, and flew towards the young man in casual clothes. Boom. University flower bed. Fang Quan noticed a sight coming from the air, and he let out a small sigh, and Banner's shocked and surprised face appeared in his mind. Nick Fury hurriedly asked, "What's the matter, Mr. Fang?" Tony Stark was wearing a steel armor, curious, "What's wrong? What did you find?" General Ross and Phil Coulson also followed Fang Quan. Fang Quan raised his eyebrows. Hulk actually has the ability of spiritual vision, and can see other energy fluctuations and dimensional changes. This thick-browed, big-eyed, thick-skinned guy actually has a strong potential for spiritual power and passive vision. Good guy, if it weren't for Hulk's lack of sanity, this guy could be a cameo magician. Boom! An explosion occurred in the scientific research building in the distance, and a terrifying shockwave erupted, killing all the ghost soldiers around. Shockwave arrived at the flower bed in the blink of an eye, causing everyone to curl up subconsciously, cover their ears, and look at the scientific research building in horror. Hulk. Boom. A huge green humanoid muscular monster more than 5 meters high jumped out of the scientific research building and hit the lawn with a ferocious scowl. Around Hulk, ghost soldiers quickly flew out of the shadows, threatening to attack him with Tang Dao in hand. Die! Rage's roar sounded. Hulk slammed into the ground angrily, and the terrifying shockwave erupted again, instantly blasting and killing the ghost soldiers around them into black aura and dissipating in the air. The ground trembled, and the shockwave struck again. General Ross couldn't stand stably and fell to the ground. He watched in shock as the huge body in the distance swelled again, reaching a height of 6 meters in a breath, comparable to the height of the 3rd floor. Nick Fury was holding on to the helicopter on the side, cursing, "Ross. This is the super soldier plan that your military came up with. You put a monster in the university. This is an event of an extremely bad nature." Ross hurriedly took out his mobile phone and dialed the first number in his contacts during the earthquake. In less than 2 seconds, the phone was connected, and a crying girl's voice came out, "Dad, Dad." Rose's voice choked up. "Daughter, where are you okay?" "Dad, I'm fine, Banner, woohoo." Banner turned into a monster. Ross was relieved when he heard that his daughter was fine, and hurriedly looked at Fang Quan. "My lord, please save my daughter. I am willing to pay any price." Fang Quan stroked his chin. 2 copies of super soldier serum. Rose's eyes widened. "What the hell are you robbing? Only a few have been developed in total, why do you have to take 2? Fang Quan clicked his tongue. "I forgot to tell you, I seem to have forgotten to ask the soldiers to transfer your daughter away, she is still in the scientific research building." In the distance, ghostly soldiers relentlessly charged towards Rage Hulk. And Hulk punched one after another, killing all the ghost soldiers around him. Under the impact of the terrifying shockwave, the scientific research building in the distance trembled slightly, especially the floor with a damaged wall, which was a little crumbling. Ross yelled red-eyed anxiously, "4 copies. I'll give you 4 copies. Please bring Betty here." Fang Quan snapped his fingers and smiled, 8. In less than a second, a ghost soldier came out grabbing Betty. Ross looked at Betty, who was unharmed, and excitedly went up to hug his daughter. "Betty. My Betty." Seeing her father, Betty wept and hugged her father to find a sense of security. In the distance, Rage Hulk saw Betty being caught beside the source of darkness, roared angrily, and rushed over. Tony was so frightened that he hurriedly took off to dodge. "You guys stop him." The machine guns and soldiers concealed all around rushed to fight back, trying to prevent the Hulk from approaching General Ross. Nick Fury and Phil Coulson almost scrambled back, with no thought of resistance at all in their minds. "What the hell, this big green guy, just take one left and one right, and everyone will come back to the west together. Who dares to approach such a terrifying monster easily?" Fang Quan saw Hulk enter the state of extreme rage, the life gamma energy on his body condensed into substance under his skin, showing a wild smile, laughing loudly and facing him. Fun, so much fun. This is a miracle, a powerful, crazy warrior who can constantly rely on emotions to draw infinite energy. A dark yellow dog charm appeared in Fang Quan's left eye, and a blue cow charm appeared in his right eye. The muscles of his body swelled, and before the terrifying force could fully erupt, Fang Quan's upper body clothes were already shattered. A series of terrifying invisible forces condensed on Fang Quan's right arm, and a phantom with a light blue bull's head roared on his fist. Tony, who was flying in midair, saw that he was so frightened that he was numb. "This looks more terrifying than the last time he punched. Why are you more ruthless every time than last time?" Out of the corner of Tony's eyes, he saw Rose and Betty on the ground who hadn't evacuated. They gritted their teeth and fell down. A pair of shields were stretched out from the armor's arms, and they were firmly planted on the ground. Seeing this, the leader, Ghost Shadow, had a flash of light in his blood eyes, and the soldiers around Ghost Shadow received the order, stretched their palms into the shadows and pulled out the shield, and quickly formed a shield wall to block everyone. The Dark King cares most about Tony, followed by Ross, who has a business relationship, and then Nick Fury and Phil Coulson, who find it useful. The leader, Ghost Shadow, carries out the will of the Dark Lord with absolute loyalty, even if he never speaks. As the most loyal warrior of the Dark Lord, he will perfectly carry out all the wishes of the Dark Lord. Quickly protect everyone present. Doing more is always better than doing nothing. In the next second, Fang Quan and Hulk's fists collided. One moment of loneliness, the next moment is endless shockwave explosion. Boom! The ground at the center of the explosion collapsed, earth, rocks, vegetation flew, and shockwave overturned and destroyed everything. In a breath, shockwave came to the shield wall formed by ghost soldiers. The ghost soldiers successfully resisted the most ferocious force, and were crushed into black aura in the next instant and dissipated in the air. The people behind them were blown over by the shockwave, fell to the ground one after another, and kept rolling on the ground. Rose tightly protected his daughter under his body, raised his head pale, and looked at the scene in front of him. As if a natural disaster had struck, everything was overturned, and countless broken stones and civil engineering were whirling in midair. The originally flat and beautiful University Square has turned into half ruins at this moment. The battle place in the distance looks like it was hit by a meteorite, and there is only a huge amount of deep pit. Chapter 21. Tony's arms were numb, the energy of the arc reactor dropped by more than 20% plus, the surfaces of the two shields also became curved and concave, and he even slid back more than half a meter, leaving a deep line on the ground ravine. He poked his head out in horror. Fang Quan's fist is getting stronger and stronger. Nick Fury poked his head out from behind him cowardly, with a look of horror on his face, as this made by a fist. The scariest, most shockingly destructive effects, with only the most unpretentious attacks. Tony gasped. Otherwise, you must not have seen the scene where he knocked out half of my villa with one punch in order to test his strength. Nick Fury opened his mouth wide in shock, looking at the scene in front of him. Gah, then he must have pulled back. Betty hurriedly lifted her father's protection and shouted tearfully, Banner! Banner! Where are you? Call back! A howl of pain sounded from the pit, answering Betty's cry. Betty pushed her father away desperately, ran towards the deep pit, and ran to the edge of the deep pit. Seeing the scene at the center of the explosion, she subconsciously covered her mouth. Half of the Hulk's right arm was in a distorted state, the arm drooped unnaturally, his left knee was kneeling on the ground with a face full of pain, with beads of sweat on his forehead, and he looked at the young man in front of him angrily and unwillingly. At this moment, Fang Quan's upper body clothes had completely disappeared, revealing a lean and perfect handsome body, and the corner of his mouth was slightly raised as he looked at the Hulk in front of him. Yes, you are the only one who can make me feel attacked right now. Comfortable, I like this kind of fist that can smash everything into scum with one punch. Fang Quan raised his head slightly, looked at Rage's unwilling eyes in front of him, and showed a kind smile. If you can let me enjoy a battle that is physically and mentally enjoyable, I will give you a gift. Hulk's fist is powerful and enjoyable enough to fight. Hulk's eyes were bloodshot with anger, and the injury on his right arm began to heal quickly, roaring, Death! The green giant's casserole-sized fist came head-on, tearing the air barrier with terrifying force and sending out a sonic boom. The surface of the dark green fist was faintly reddened by the intense friction with the air, and it reached Fang Quan in an instant. Fang Quan's hair was blown by the wind pressure, his expression was indifferent, and he stretched out a hand to block in front of him. Boom! The wind roared violently, and punched Fang Quan's side into a fist-shaped pit again. Yu Wei roared up the slope, blowing Betty on the edge of the pit and rolling him out. Fang Quan's face was slightly joyful. He grasped the strength of the Hulk with one hand, and the eyes that looked at the Hulk became more and more satisfied. This is simply a qualified sandbag. Hulk's fist at this moment was like a small mountain, but he couldn't advance an inch in front of Fang Quan, and was firmly suppressed by an inch. The Hulk roared, the muscles on his body became stronger, and the fist on his right arm was twisted with blue veins, but he couldn't move forward a bit. Fang Quan felt it was very interesting, The bull charm in his body was constantly running, so he raised his foot and kicked it. Boom! The Hulk flew out like lightning, broke through the edge of the big pit, forming a circular pothole, and the figure quickly lifted into the air. Fang Quan stepped on the ground exploded, and his body was lifted into the air at a high speed. With a chuckle, he raised his fist and caught up with the Hulk, who was still flying upwards. The Hulk could only let out an impotent and furious roar in midair, flailing his limbs indiscriminately, his eyes fixed on Fang Quan, but he had nowhere to use his strength. Fang Quan's fist fell, and the Hulk instinctively raised his arms in front of him. Boom! Huge amounts of the green figure fell to the ground, smashing a big hole in the university playground again, and the ground around it kept trembling. Fang Quan landed on the edge of the big pit with a boom, and looked at the Hulk in the depths of the big pit playfully. Hulk's arms were broken, twisted and lying in front of his body, making a constant clicking sound, and the powerful recovery force was quickly repairing his injuries. Fang Quan let out a light snort, feeling the Hulk's energy soar again. Interesting, a bit like a berserker, getting stronger as he fights. Hulk's injury recovered in the blink of an eye, and he jumped hard, the ground collapsed, he flew up, and slammed into Fang Quan. Fang Quan clenched his fist with a smile, the magic power of the bull charm erupted, and his right arm fell on the Hulk, flying in front of him like a mad cow, roaring in an instant. Boom! The Hulk returned to the pit at an even faster pace, the ground shaking constantly. As for the place where Fang Quan was, due to the terrifying battle between the two, it exploded in an instant, countless earth and rocks collapsed, and the ground appeared to be crushed. In the distance, Tony, who was eating melons in an unmanned reconnaissance drone, was smacking his tongue. These two guys are too scary. The gamma energy on the Hulk is getting stronger and stronger with the battle, and Fang Magician is able to stay steady all the time. Suppress him. The corner of Nick Fury's mouth twitched. The destructiveness of this punch is indeed more powerful than the Hellfire missile. Even in comparison, the destructive power of Fang Quan's fist is more concentrated and more terrifying. General Ross watched his daughter being carried into the ambulance by the medical team with a pale face, and turned his head to look at the battle site, his eyes slightly dazed. What kind of monster did we create? Phil Coulson thoughtfully reminded General Ross, if you allow yourself to catch him, you will only anger this terrifying monster and cause even more terrible consequences. I believe you have also seen that he not only has terrifying power, but also has a strong defense ability, even more extreme recovery ability. Tony made up the knife very kindly. I believe that if you don't kill hundreds of people, you won't even be able to lure this monster out of the university. The ground trembled constantly, and a series of constantly sonic booms came from the deep pit. General Ross smiled bitterly. The super soldier plan has been successful. Tony snorted coldly with disdain. Yes, the plan that only succeeded once. I still believe that the hardware is more reliable. If Fang Quan didn't make a move this time, you would just wait for dismissal. General Ross's eyes moved slightly, his mouth opened, and he finally decided to keep his mouth shut. How did this young man, known as the King of Darkness, acquire such a powerful force? Nick Fury saw his intention, sighed silently twice, and shook his head. Don't think too much, he is an immortal existence, even his subordinates are also immortal. Tony was shocked. Are you telling the truth? Nick Fury pointed to the bloody eyes that resurfaced in the surrounding shadows, and the ninjas in black who came out one after another to watch the battle. I saw with my own eyes when they were training. They chopped off the opponent's head, and then came out of the shadows, come out again. Tony, what the hell? General Ross's face twitched slightly, and he could only suppress all the distracting thoughts in his heart. It was already a rare thing to get Fang Quan's help to get through this difficult time. If he didn't know how to provoke this Dark King again. Hulk today. This is the future of the military. In the deep pit, which has turned into an underground world that has collapsed everywhere, the Hulk is kneeling on the ground, panting, sweating, looking at Fang Quan unwillingly. Fang Quan looked at the Hulk in front of him and raised his eyebrows slightly. Interesting. No matter how badly injured, the Hulk in rage can heal quickly. The requirement of the mission is to suppress Rage's Hulk. So here comes the problem. How to suppress a monster with a powerful healing ability, whose strength will increase with anger, and become stronger as it fights. This time, Fang Quan realized that he has a charm similar to regenerative healing factor, unless he finds a way to seal it, otherwise this kind of person will never be suppressed. Fang Quan snapped his fingers, and the bloody eyes of the leader Guiying lit up in the dark shadows. Transfer everyone nearby, I'm going to start playing seriously. Tisk, I just don't know what power my Wanwan will have next. The bloody eyes of the leader ghost shadow disappeared in the darkness, and the surrounding shadows quickly began to wander away. Countless ghost shadow soldiers flew out of the deep pit and began to transfer everyone nearby. Fang Quan moved his wrist and saw that Hulk also recovered most of his injuries during this breath, smiling. Interesting, you can use mutant cells to extract energy from the environment to become stronger. Theoretically, with your extreme rage, unless I destroy the time and space in your area, you will never be defeated. The Hulk's eyes had turned blood red during the battle, and he lost all reason, only the crazy rage. Roar. The terrifying roar erupted into sound waves, even shaking the gravel on the ground around Fang Quan into powder. After the sound waves hit the stone wall, the surrounding area trembled continuously. Fang Quan smiled. Then, I just need to convince you. If the child is not sensible, just give him a good beating. As soon as Fang Quan stepped on the ground, his figure disappeared in an instant, and even left an afterimage on the spot. In an instant, the ground where Fang Quan was originally was exploded instantly due to the powerful force. Relying on his excellent spiritual energy, the furious Hulk saw Fang Quan's attack direction, and punched forward, and the fist turned into substance, like a bombardment cannon. Fang Quan let this punch hit his body, his upper body collided with huge amounts of fists, and made an astonishing sound of iron and steel. Fang Quan patted the back of this huge green palm lightly. Snapped. Taking the slapped place on the back of the hand as the center of the circle, the skin at the center of the circle was instantly sunken, and the surrounding green skin began to roll like waves. The huge green arm was suppressed by a powerful force, and it hit the ground abruptly, smashing a big hole in the ground. The Hulk was furious because of the severe pain, and it was reflected in his eyes that Fang Quan, who flew up, raised his fist and aimed it at his cheek. A look of horror appeared on the Hulk's face, and his body retreated instinctively. No matter how hard he fought before, this terrifying man didn't punch his head. But now, this man is getting serious. I can't stand this punch. Boom! The Hulk's head was thrown backwards in an instant, and he fell abruptly into the ground. Fang Quan landed on the Hulk's chest, smiled and clenched his fist. This punch, with 15 days worth of skill, can you handle it? The Hulk struggled to raise his head, his terrified eyes reflecting the falling fist. Boom! Punch after punch, Fang Quan let go of his hand to attack comfortably, the ground was smashed and sank continuously, and the whole underground world was constantly shaking. The Hulk was completely suppressed by Fang Quan's happy fist, unable to lift his head at all, and could only scream in pain. Hearing his screams, Fang Quan's expression became more and more excited, showing a frenzied smile. Aren't you recovering very well? Recover again. The Hulk's cheeks became pitted, and he screamed and raised his arms to smash Fang Quan on his chest. Huge amounts of fists landed on Fang Quan, making a terrifying explosion, but he couldn't shake Fang Quan in the slightest. After the Hulk's attack, what he got was Fang Quan's more vicious suppressing attack. A sense of powerlessness and despair welled up in his heart, and the Hulk could only endure the ferocious suppression attack in pain. The screams became louder and louder, and after a while, they became smaller and smaller. Suppression of the Hulk is completed, the number of lucky draws +1. The 6-meter-tall Hulk held his head in his hands, curled up on the ground, and let out a suppressed cry of pain, just like a poor child who was being bullied. Fang Quan's face showed joy, and he let out a breath of relief, feeling physically and mentally happy. It's really cool. This kid is simply a tailor-made sandbag for himself. These days, being too strong is not a good thing, and it is difficult to find a reliable sandbag. The Hulk felt the destructive attack stop, lowered some of his arms tremblingly, and looked at Fang Quan on his chest with terrified eyes. Fang Quan saw his huge amounts of eyes, showed a kind smile, and raised his arms. Ah! The Hulk let out a horrified scream, and once again put his hands on his head, not daring to look at Fang Quan. As Banner's subconscious personality, Hulk had only been born for a short period of time and was completely unable to bear this unbearable pain. Seeing his miserable state, Fang Quan laughed loudly. You were really unlucky, you were obviously an invincible powerhouse in the world, and you met me, a big devil, just after you left Shinsho village, ha 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 ha. The big devil blocked the novice village at the beginning, ha 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 ha, it's really interesting and fun. The Hulk only dared to scream in fear on the ground, not daring to resist. All his resistance can only be exchanged for Fang Quan's ruthless suppression and crushing attack. Fang Quan was too lazy to argue with the Hulk of this child's consciousness, and pressed his hand on his huge amounts of arm. Your consciousness is very violent, and it will hurt the protagonist Banner. I will use the horse charm to provide you with healing energy for a month, so that it can give you two enough time to get to know each other, rather than this split state. The white light of the horse charm lit up, quickly wrapping the 6-meter-tall Hulk completely, and healing his physical and mental injuries. The original power of the horse charm is to restore things to a perfect state, not a simple treatment. The white light dissipated, Fang Quan withdrew his hands, and looked at the Hulk in front of him. Hulk's eyes have returned from desperate fear to clarity. Fang Quan clapped his hands. Are you awake? Banner's scholarly yet calm voice sounded out with a wry smile. Sir, you are really ruthless. Hulk's power is controlled by Hulk, but now, after being treated by Fang Quan, Hulk has the ability to return to the spiritual world. Hulk immediately ran back to the spiritual world and hid, leaving everything to the protagonist Banner processing. Now, Banner has all the memories from before, and he also knows with a wry smile that the person in front of him most likely came to deal with this incident on him. Fang Quan's eyes were indifferent. Be my sandbag, otherwise, you will die here today. Treatment is not priceless. The corner of Banner's mouth twitched. This is not human rights. Fang Quan's eyes turned slightly cold. I don't like bargaining. The aura on his body began to become majestic. A terrifying king of darkness descended. The surrounding space became dim, and blood eyes opened in the darkness, staring coldly at the Banner Hulk in front of him. Banner swallowed. Agreed. I agree. This monster is too scary. Banner doesn't think he can fight this monster by becoming the Hulk. A unilateral beating ended, and he was beaten and crippled. This monster didn't even shed a drop of sweat. If this monster is serious, he will definitely die. Seeing that this kid was willing to obey, Fang Quan looked much better. Then you will follow me from now on. Banner smiled wryly. Then, what about the military? I was wanted by the military before, but for the sake of my identity, they just grounded me. Now, with such a big mess, the military will definitely not let it go. For this super biological weapon, the military will definitely do everything possible to obtain its own genetic samples. Fang Quan looked indifferent. You don't need to worry about this, just stay here. After speaking, Fang Quan closed his eyes and began to choose the lottery. Banner was dumbfounded. He didn't understand what was going on, but he obediently kept his figure and lay down on the ground, letting Fang Quan step on him. Start the lottery draw. Swish swish swish. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Dragon Charm. Dragon Charm. Active. The host acquires a powerful blasting ability. Passive. The host obtains perfect magic ability. Fang Quan opened his eyes. His face was full of joy. I actually got the dragon spell with the strongest attack range and extremely high lethality. Fang Quan excitedly raised his hand. Aiming ahead, a crimson dragon-shaped runestone appeared under the flesh of his palm, and then, a crimson pillar of fire gushed out from his palm, with a temperature as high as 6,000 degrees, rubbing against the green. The bridge of the giant's nose flew out. Boom! Hurrah! The pillar of fire smashed into the wall, instantly melting and gasifying the surrounding rocks, and the earth and stone walls around the pillar of fire turned into billowing magma and slid down, some even splashed onto the Hulk's head. Banner screamed, ouch, and pushed Fang Quan standing on his chest, stopping his test. Banner jumped up with a whoosh, and, boom, smashed his head into the stone wall above his head, making a whimpering sound of struggle. Fang Quan looked at the Banner Hulk hanging on the stone wall above his head with a confused face. His limbs were constantly struggling. What's the matter? I'm aiming at the stone wall, not your lifeblood. Do you need such a big reaction? The Banner Hulk struggled for a while, put his hands against the stone wall, pulled his head out, and landed on the ground with a boom. Banner's face was full of pain, and he held his cheeks with his hands, relying on his own strong recovery power to repair the injury. Confirmed, the one on the other side is indeed reserved. If you didn't keep your hands, you should be ashes. That high temperature is definitely close to the surface temperature of the sun. Fang Quan looked at the top of the Hulk's head in front of him, and couldn't hold back a poof laugh, but hurriedly held it back. No, this is too immoral to laugh in person. Banner looked at him blankly. What are you laughing at? Lava was poured on my head, is it funny? Overhead. Banner screamed in pain, my hair. The miserable screams echoed throughout the underground world. Fang Quan turned his head away, trying not to let Banner see his uncontrollable smile. Lava splashed on top of Banner's head, transforming him into a bald hulk for just a moment. At this moment, his head is bald, without a single hair. With a high temperature of 6,000 degrees, the curative effect is fast, and it takes effect in a second. Banner desperately touched the repaired top of his head. The injury was healed, but the hair was gone forever. Fang Quan suppressed a smile and raised his hand. Well, I'll give you another treatment, trust me. Banner didn't care about any fear. He squatted down quickly and let Fang Quan touch his big head. Fang Quan used the horse charm, and after the white light, everything went on as usual. It turns out that the horse charm is an undead power, not a cure for baldness. Banner lifted his big green head expectantly, and looked at Fang Quan eagerly, hoping to get the news that his hair would come back. Fang Quan withdrew his hand indiscriminately. I have already transferred all the people above. How about this, you go back to the villa with my people first. Banner was dumbfounded. I'm bald. It's hopeless. Fang Quan said seriously. Take the path of the dark world, no one will see you. Banner looked at Fang Quan desperately. I'm only 24 years old, I can't be bald yet. Fang Quan clicked his tongue. Stop talking nonsense, it will grow back in a few months. Banner's eyes were full of sadness. What if it doesn't grow back? Fang Quan raised his eyebrows. Why don't you die here? Banner clenched his fists in grief and anger. I'm going the way of the dark world. Fang Quan snapped his fingers, and several ghost soldiers came out from the darkness, grabbed Banner huge amounts of body, and brought him into the darkness. Sadly, Banner was led by these dark creatures to the villa where Fang Quan lived. The outside world, outside the University of Caledonian. General Ross felt the ground tremble continuously, and the land around the big pit in the distance continued to collapse, falling into the bottomless and dark underground world. Tony, on the other hand, leisurely enjoyed the live broadcast brought by the drone. Hey, look at this fist, rubbing this big green guy on the ground. Nick Fury leaned next to him, his forehead dripping with sweat. An immortal human being, his strength is truly terrifying. Look, this lean muscular body of a handsome man, and this terrifying destructive power. Phil Coulson nodded approvingly. Tony glanced at the data stream displayed in the corner of the live screen without any trace. Be good, the energy level of the second most handsome man in Blue Star can change at any time. Is his body connected to an energy planet? Nick Fury gasped slightly. Huh. Why was this big green guy taken away? Ross was startled, and hurriedly pushed Nick Fury away, seeing the Hulk being taken away by the ninjas in black. No, he can't be taken away. He is the result of our research. The Hulk is an accidental product of the super soldier plan. How could it be taken away? What can't be taken away? Fang Quan came out from the dark shadows beside him, with his hands in his pockets, his expression indifferent. Ross looked resolute. Mr. Fang, you can't take the Hulk away. He is the result of our research. It is the wisdom crystallization of our Eagle country's scientific research and technology. Fang Quan nodded in agreement. Okay, then you kill me. If you kill me, you can get the Hulk. General Ross's face was stiff, and his words were strangled to death. Hellfire missiles can't even break Hulk's skin. The Hulk, which is more terrifying than the Hellfire missile, did not cause the slightest damage to Fang Quan. What can the military do? Really going to provoke this powerful superpower who summoned soldiers to control the surrounding dozen square kilometers in a single thought? Fang Quan snorted disdainfully. Send me 8 potions, if one is missing, my army will go get it myself. Rose's face flushed, his mouth was tightly shut, and he couldn't say a word. For a terrifying powerhouse who can open up an underground world in a university city in the blink of an eye, he is not qualified to resist. Fang Quan looked at Tony, who was eating melons and watching the show. You prepare a batch of biological laboratory research equipment to send over. Tony looked excited, his eyes brightened. Okay, awesome, Fang magician. How domineering. Look at King Fang. Opening your mouth means that you have the ability to fight against me. General Ross didn't dare to say anything, and swallowed forcefully. Fang Quan didn't bother to talk much, and after confirming that the person he was following was not injured, a dark door rose behind him, and the door moved forward automatically, leading Fang Quan into the dark world to leave. Nick Fury was dumbfounded, and opened his hands. How about a plan for us? What about the chance to recruit the Hulk? Gone. I offended Ross for this, I sold the president a favor, and I almost wore out my underpants. What about chance? What is my chance? You just don't give me a chance, so tell me how to delay Thanos' arrival. General Ross's expression on the ground was uncertain for a while, and he could only sigh weakly and give up struggling. What else can I do? Really offend this super strong? This is the Dark King who controls a dark empire and has a group of immortal soldiers. The secretary said hesitantly, General, what should we do now? Rose's temples are white, his eyes are slightly lost, and his voice is low. It's not completely unrewarding, the data of the super soldier serum can be more complete. It's a pity that the more powerful Banner serum can't be obtained anyway. In the suburbs of California, in the villa area, Fang Quan's home. Fang Quan was sitting on the chair. Banner had returned to his normal figure, and changed into a casual outfit with the help of ghost soldiers. Banner looked around in amazement. In his sight, all the shadows here are connected to another dimension of the world. In these shadows lies a world of jet black rich in species diversity. Banner was extremely surprised. There is a whole world inside these shadows, you must be a big shot. Hey, then definitely, he's the Dark Lord. With a look of novelty on his face, Tony was brought out of the shadows by ghost soldiers, along with Nick Fury and Phil Coulson. Tony clicked his tongue. Dimensional space shuttle. Fang Magician, this ability under your command is so powerful. Nick Fury's face became more serious. Originally, he still felt that relying on the mainstream technological level of human beings, he still had a little face in front of this Dark King. But looking at it now, the level of this dark empire is not necessarily lower than the civilization level of mainstream human society. Space shuttle, everyone knows how to do it. It's outrageous. You know, transportation ability determines the speed of development. This transportation ability, that is, human beings stepping out of the blue star, cannot meet this standard. Now there is only one lining left. Seeing Nick Fury, Fang Quan remembered his promise. No, I seem to have promised you, I will give you a chance to recruit the Hulk, right? A look of joy appeared on Nick Fury's face. Really? Thank you, the noble Dark King. Banner looked at Fang Quan in bewilderment. Fang Quan didn't bother to talk, and drank the tea brought by the leader Guiying. Nick Fury cleared his throat and took out his business card from his pocket. Mr. Banner, hello, I'm SHIELD Director, and my duty is to protect the strategic defense of Eagle Country's homeland. Now I want to invite you to join a great project, the Avengers Project. This planet is about to be invaded by alien civilizations, and the people of Eagle Country need your strength. Banner didn't even look at the business card, and shook his head decisively. No, no, thank you for your invitation, please allow me to decline. I want to stay here. Nick Fury was dumbfounded. Why? Stay here? Have you forgotten how miserable you were when you were beaten on the ground by Fang Quan in the big pit? Are you addicted to being beaten? Banner's face was serious. The power in my body has not been controlled. Without Mr. Fang's help, I'm afraid I would have become a monster who lost my mind. I also want to fight for the people, but not now. Banner is very clear about the importance, although Fang Quan only treats himself as a sandbag, but staying by Fang Quan's side is the best choice. Once he leaves Fang Quan's sphere of influence, the military will definitely not let it go. As for this oath of S.H.I.E.L.D., hey, the military's oath was much louder than this. Then what? Then I was wanted by the military for no apparent reason. Fang Quan at least treated me as a human being and gave me a chance to be reborn. You guys, do you see me as a human being? Nick Fury was completely dumbfounded, never expecting this situation. Even if we play through our wealth, we can't get any better treatment than the Dark King. The Dark King really gives eternal life. Fang Quan snorted and looked at Banner. It's a little surprising that you will stay with me. Banner's eyes were firm. At least in the eyes of your soldiers, I see absolute loyalty. It is better to follow a group of people who have faith than to follow a group of people who will stab themselves at any time. Fang Quan waved his hand. Go away. Nick Fury smiled wryly, and in the end his busy work was wasted. My lord, please tell me how to break the situation. I need to be responsible for the people of Eagle Country. While drinking tea, Fang Quan said casually, you can study the Tesseract, but you can't open it. Once you open it, the alien civilization will lock the coordinates of the Blue Star and send it over to start the war. Nick Fury nodded gratefully. Thank you, that Thanos. Fang Quan got the dragon charm and banner, and he was in a good mood. He was willing to give some pointers. There are many hidden superheroes and supervillains on Blue Planet. When disaster strikes, they will not stand by and watch. In any case, everyone is living on this planet, and there will always be some people who are willing to risk their lives to fight for their homeland. Nick Fury's face looked much better. He bowed his head to show his gratitude, and then backed out. Just this message of Tesseract can temporarily prevent Blue Star from a disaster. The value of this news is equivalent to a credit for saving the world. Phil Coulson saluted gratefully and left. Hearing this, Tony's complexion became much better. I didn't do this by myself. I thought I was bound to die, but there is still room for maneuver. Fang Quan smiled. You are definitely not alone in the war, but there are not many people who can snap their fingers. Tony's face was slightly stiff. Hey, my dear Fang, I don't want to die, is there any other way? Fang Quan pouted his lips and motioned him to look at Banner in front of him. On this planet, the price for him to survive after snapping his fingers is the loss of an arm. Tony's eyes lit up immediately, and he looked at Banner with affection. Hey, dear friend, I'm giving you a chance to be brothers with the smartest and richest super genius on this planet. I think you will cherish this opportunity. Banner was full of question marks. What snapping fingers? What pot? Fang Quan was too lazy to say anything, and continued to drink tea with a calm expression. Tony began to ask Banner excitedly, Brother, I just checked your information. You need a biology laboratory. I'll arrange it for you right away. Banner looked distressed. Yes, I want to study what is going on with my genes. My biological father, he turned into a monster who will do anything to pursue power. Challenge mission. Crazy absorber. Task reward. Number of draws +1. Fang Quan spit out a sip of tea, shocked. You still have a mutant father. It seems that there is such a thing. After Fang Quan thought about it carefully, he remembered from a corner of his memory that the Hulk was not mutated by gamma rays. And this mutant gene was passed on to him by his father. Fang Quan looked at Banner with a surprised look. It's been a long time since I co-authored, and you are not only a second-generation scientist but also a second-generation mutant. Banner smiled bitterly. My father can absorb any substance and assimilate into them. The day before yesterday, after he absorbed my energy, he left. I don't know where he is now. Fang Quan smiled, and snapped his fingers. Go, tell Nick Fury, borrow their flying aircraft carrier, and check the source of moving gamma rays. Tony was shocked. What flying aircraft carrier? Are they so powerful? Fang Quan smiled and didn't bother to explain. The ability to absorb people is very powerful. When you touch electricity, you can become a lightning man. When you touch the wind, you can become a storm man, and when you touch vibranium, you can become a vibranium man. And he can swallow a lot of energy to strengthen himself. If he hadn't met Hulk, the dutiful son who can infinitely absorb and release energy, he would have become the Overlord. As a result, he was beaten to death by the Hulk, a dutiful son, with endless angry gamma energy. Fang Quan stroked his chin, very interested in this person. After all, this absorber has energy and he really dares to absorb it, and because of his ability, it can be said to be a universal charger, which is very easy to use in various environments. Thump, thump, thump. Nick Fury went back and forth, and rushed in with a shocked expression. Mr. Fang, how do you know about the flying aircraft carrier? Flying aircraft carrier project. I just arrived at the preliminary construction project. How do you know about this? Phil Coulson's face was also shocked. What flying aircraft carrier? Director, do we still have this kind of thing? When did our shield technology become so awesome? Fang Quan raised his eyebrows, feeling uncomfortable. Do you want to borrow? Nick Fury opened his mouth to fack, but was forced to press it down again. The corners of his mouth twitched. If you want to detect mobile gamma ray energy, I can help you, but I can't help you with the flying aircraft carrier. Mad, does this Dark King have time schizophrenia? One eye in the future and one eye in the present, confusing memories. My flying aircraft carrier is only half built now. Fang Quan frowned. What do you mean? Nick Fury smiled bitterly. Because the flying aircraft carrier is only halfway through construction now, and there is no Gamma laboratory installed, this laboratory is still on the ground. The air fell into silence for a moment. Tony's eyes widened. You actually have a flying aircraft carrier. Banner was shocked. Mr. Fang, does your prophecy ability have images? So accurate. It is so accurate that the flying aircraft carrier will appear, and there will even be a Gamma laboratory on it. I was shocked. What is this prophetic ability? Everyone was stunned for a moment, not knowing whether to say Fang Quan's prophecy ability is awesome or not. Let's say he's not awesome, he really knows what it's like to be on a flying aircraft carrier. Call him awesome, he seems to have got the time wrong. This sentence may have been said 3 years earlier. Fang Quan clicked his tongue. Okay, go get it. As a deal, I will give you the chance you want in the future. Nick Fury looked shocked and complicated, and left with Phil Coulson helplessly. What the hell, are you predicting ability? Are you staring at the surveillance screen of the future? Tony and Banner looked at Fang Quan in shock. Shocked once again by his dire prophecy ability. Let's just say, I know you predicted that ability is awesome, but I didn't expect it to be so awesome. If you think about it casually, you can know what you want at that moment and that place in the future. Awesome. Fang Quan clicked his tongue. Why? I'm just half-assed, and I know when the end of the world will happen. Tony thinks his words are the cultural modesty of Longguo people. What concept is this? This is equivalent to the fact that I can only solve doomsday disasters, and ordinary problems are not worthy of my energy. Banner is shocked. I am very shocked that your Dark Kingdom can master the ability to travel through space, and it is even more outrageous that your eyes can see the future. Who would believe it if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes? Fang Quan didn't bother to pay attention to the shock of these people, got up and went to the back garden to play with the beauties. It's so boring, isn't this basic practice? This search took one night, and the time soon came to the next day. Fang Quan was sitting in the living room, playing with the beauty with his arms around her. The beauty smiled and fed Fang Quan apples with her lips. Tony and Banner walked in with dark circles under their eyes, suspicious of life on their faces. Seeing their expressions, Fang Quan was surprised. What's wrong with you two? Tony silently handed a piece of information to Fang Quan. The absorber found it, but not by the Gamma lab. Banner's face was full of doubts about the collapse of life. I became the son of the most wanted criminal in the world. Fang Quan had a question mark on his head, took a look at the information, and immediately spit out the apple in his mouth, with a shocked face. After the absorber got the power of the Hulk, he couldn't wait to find Ross's military base. After arriving at the military base, he directly launched an anti-magnetic field position, cut off all communication abilities, and started killing in the military base alone. This night, the recruiter killed one Happy, one Shu Chong, and one blood flowed into rivers. Absorbing people fully demonstrated to everyone last night what invincible loneliness is. Sometimes it turns into a Hulk to wreak havoc, sometimes it turns into a thunderbolt and lightning tyrannizes everything, and sometimes it turns into an earth giant and smashes mountains and rivers. There's even a level of anti-offensive stance that makes all military attacks pretty weak. The more shocking and speechless thing is that in the beginning, it was reasonable to absorb people, but because of communication errors, it fell into a frenzy. The specific records are as follows. Absorber. Hand over Rose, and I will spare your life. Guard. I don't know. The general is out. The absorbing person was furious. You don't even hand in death. Then you all go to die. Guard. I really don't know. Absorb people berserk. Guard. Sudden. After the absorbers killed everyone, they had to admit one thing, they really didn't know where Rose had gone. In the end, the absorber turned into a gust of wind and left the military base, leaving a ruined wall and corpses all over the ground. In the end, Ross, who returned to the base, discovered that the base had been stolen, and Rage issued the most wanted order to kill the absorber at any cost. Go out to catch a wave of green super soldier serum development, and when you come back, your hometown is blown up. Who can stand it? After Fang Quan finished reading it, he was astonished, and kept pointing his fingers at the report. Banner, your father is awesome. Look, he really killed a secret military high-level base. Ginger is still spicy from the older generation. Look at it, it made his son cry. Banner burst into tears. I just fell asleep, and when I opened my eyes, I found out that I was also a most wanted criminal. This amounts to delisting in the Eagle Nation social sense. Fang Quan was surprised. He also went to kill Rose's base last night. Tony explained sympathetically, because the military discovered that some of the power used by David Banner belonged to Banner, and suspected that he indirectly supported this shocking massacre. Fang Quan suddenly had a surprised face. Oh, it's interesting, Banner, you will be killed by the military regardless of the cost as soon as you go out now, isn't it very interesting? Banner was devastated. He never expected that his biological father would do such a crazy thing. If you pursue power by any means, just pursue it, why are you engaging in massacres? At most, Banner thought that his father's pursuit of power was to smash a window, but he never thought that his father would knock down the roof of the entire Eagle country. Tony was still on the sidelines making up the knife thoughtfully. Now as long as you open any channel, you can see David Banner and Bruce Banner's photo in the most prominent position. Fang Quan was overjoyed, and hurriedly asked the leader, Hu Ying, to move the largest LCD TV over. It's a lot of fun, you gotta watch it. The fact is, as Tony said, the pictures of David Banner and Bruce Banner are put on the front page of all TV channels. The entire TV screen, only these two photos are in color, and the background is blood gray, giving people a depressing feeling. The wanted notice for these two people is still playing in a loop. Fang Quan pointed at the big screen and laughed. You are more famous than me. Banner covered his head with a broken face, not wanting to say a word. Tony couldn't hold it back, and laughed too. Ha 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 ha. I'm sorry, I couldn't hold back, you are too miserable. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell. Tony's phone rang. He glanced at Fang Quan, connected the phone, and turned on the speaker. Roddy's voice was very tired and broken, and it sounded like a painful mask on his face. God, Tony, you never know what I went through last night. Take all the air forces to find a man who can change into any shape the monster. Now that the president has issued a death order, this monster must be killed. Tony's tone was light. Hey, brother without money, do you need an intelligence service? I have a clue for Bruce Banner here. What, you want to share such a good thing with me? Tell me quickly. Tony smirked. Fang Magician just took Bruce Banner under his wing yesterday. So, do you have any reliable clues? When Luo Di heard this, he wished to wring Tony's head off. How dare I touch Fang Quan's people? I think I have a long life. After being speechless for a while, Rodi hurriedly said, however, I heard some rumors. The military said that they will find this banner. It is estimated that they will reach Mr. Fang soon. You must report to Mr. Fang immediately. Tony rolled his eyes. Such a good opportunity, why don't you go by yourself? Roddy's voice was frantic. He doesn't have a mobile phone. How can I report it? Tony looked at Fang Quan in shock. You don't have a communication method. Fang Quan played with the beautiful woman on his lap, with a calm expression. If you find a clue to attract someone, tell me. When Luo Di heard Fang Quan's voice, he became obedient in seconds. Follow Mr. Fang, I will report to you as soon as I have new clues. Luo Di's voice was very happy. What he was brushing in front of Mr. Fang was not his face, but his own life. The phone hangs up. Tony put the phone away. With a pained face, Fang Magician, the second most handsome man in the world, can you keep Banner? I'm willing to pay any price. Banners are what changed my life, and they are worth more than anything. Fang Quan smiled contemptuously. I would like to see the person who dared to touch me. A ghost soldier came out from the shadows, knelt in front of Fang Quan, and sent him the picture of the villa gate. Looking at the picture in front of him, Fang Quan was a little surprised. Shield and Ross are fighting at the door. Tony leaned forward with a face full of melons. Oh, dear Mr. Fang, please let me see. How did you see it? Perspective or acute eyes? Fang Quan nodded slightly. The ghost soldier turned around and sent the picture to Tony. Tony opened his mouth wide in shock. Oh, teleportation. What a high-end technology. At this moment, in front of the gate of the villa, Nick Fury with the agent team is confronting Ross's special operations team. Two groups of people stood facing each other on both sides of the gate. Each of the two sides invited more than 60 people, and each of them standing here was the best of the best, full of fighting spirit. Rose's complexion was not good. Nick Fury, what do you mean? Do you really think that you, the king of agents, are qualified to challenge me? If you insist on qualifications and confidence, I am tougher than you. Nick Fury sneered. You want to touch Fang Quan? Don't blame me for not reminding you, he is the highest special advisor of our shield. Ross laughed angrily. When did he become your SHIELD's top special advisor? 2 seconds ago. This grandson is really not a good guy. When did Lao Su say he was going to move King Fang? I'm here to interrogate the Hulk. Nick Fury sneered confidently, that definitely. Shua, 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 Shua. The agent team and the special operations team took out their guns almost at the same time and pointed them at the leader in the front row of the opponent, with fierce eyes. The clues to the massacre that shocked the whole country can be found in this big villa, and this kind of credit cannot be given away casually. Nick Fury looked at the more than 30 red spots on the vital parts of his body, and raised his eyebrows slightly. Rose looked at the red circles on his forehead that were so densely packed between his brows, his face was expressionless. The two made eye contact and reached an agreement at the same time. Let's just say, scolding is scolding, insulting is insulting, there is no need to gamble with your life. The atmosphere is subtle, from intense to relaxed. Nick Fury pressed his hand slightly. Put the gun down, we are all colleagues, there is no need. Ross snorted coldly, followed by pressing his hand, and asked the Special Forces team members to put down their guns. The rivers and lakes are people's way of life, not to fight and kill, especially not to kill yourself first. Nick Fury showed a formulaic smile. General Ross, then you go first. General Ross snorted coldly, but the strength of the snort was very subtle, so that the other party would not point the gun at his eyebrows again. HMPH. Rose took the lead and walked in with his bodyguard, while the rest of the special forces were stopped by the ghosts. Nick Fury walked in with Phil Coulson and several high-level agents, and asked the others to wait outside. In the hall of the villa, Fang Quan sighed slightly regretfully. Why didn't we fight, what a pity. Tony also nodded unsatisfactorily. That's right. Banner came back to his senses. Wait a minute, people from S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military are here. Tony smirked. You can just sit here and sit here. With Fang's status as a magician, if they dared to touch you, they will definitely seek death. Banner looked anxious, but in the end he could only let out a long sigh, and sat still on the chair. Right now, this is the only place I can take refuge. Soon, 2 groups of people came to the hall and asked to meet. The leader, Ghost Shadow, led them in, glanced over and saw that there were not enough chairs in the hall, so he stretched out his hand and patted it twice. Slap. Shut up. From the surrounding shadows, more than a dozen ghost soldiers flew out like lightning, and appeared in the hall as if they were sprinting 10 times faster. Then they arranged the chairs in a uniform manner, and then kept their figures unchanged and disappeared into the surrounding shadows. Among them, pairs of blood eyes gradually faded away. The aura of Nick Fury and General Ross suddenly weakened, and everyone became obedient unconsciously. Nick Fury's pupils became needles, and only then did he realize that he still underestimated the Dark King. The speed of these soldiers is so fast that it has broken through the limit of human beings. In just over a second, they completed the operation of moving the chair, placing the chair, and returning to the shadow. Most importantly, their movements are in unison, which represents the pinnacle of discipline. This is a perfect undead army. Rose's tough face softened 3 points unconsciously. King Fang, good morning. The shock on the faces of the other Special Forces members could hardly be suppressed, their pupils trembled, and they looked at the man sitting in the first place in shock. Nick Fury took a deep breath, understood Fang Quan's temperament of being straightforward, and directly took out the information. We have found clues to attract people, please take a look. The leader ghost came over to pick up the documents, turned around and walked towards Fang Quan, knelt down on one knee, and opened the documents with both hands for Fang Quan to look at. Rose felt that he was ignored and dared not complain at all. This one is an invincible human being in the true sense. According to the calculations of the intelligence department, this man was just an ordinary human a month ago, but he became the Dark King in that cave. Reincarnation. The soul of the Dark King occupying the body. Or the awakened soul of the Dark King. Do not know. But one thing is certain. As time goes by, the power of this Dark King is recovering at a speed that ordinary people cannot understand. Who dares to offend a Dark King who controls an area of more than 10 square kilometers with a snap of his fingers? Fang Quan looked at the extremely simple information and raised his eyebrows. Interesting. On the first piece of information, there is only one line: if you catch Rose, you will definitely catch the absorber. The King of Agents still has 2 brushes, and he actually sent Ross to his door. If the absorber doesn't show up, Fang Quan will have to spend a lot of effort to get the ghost soldiers to kidnap Ross. Fang Quan snapped his fingers playfully. Grab him. In the shadows all around, a pair of bloody eyes opened, and ghostly soldiers with weapons appeared in the hall like flashes, staring at Ross with indifferent eyes. Rose's face became tense. Wait a minute, King Fang, there must be some misunderstanding between us. Fang Quan snorted coldly, too lazy to say more. There is no misunderstanding, you are my mission prop. Rose's secretary hurriedly picked up the box. Please wait a moment, we are here to deliver the super soldier serum. 10. This is the maximum amount that the general can embezzle. The ghost soldiers around stopped suddenly, but still maintained the siege formation. Bring here, Fang Quan's voice sounded. A ghost soldier stepped forward, took the box, turned around and walked up to Fang Quan, and opened it. Fang Quan looked at the 10 super soldier serums inside and nodded slightly. The quality is good. This contains powerful life gene power, and it is indeed 10 genuine super soldier serums. Fang Quan looked at Rose with indifferent eyes. What do you mean by having 2 more? Rose's eyes were full of deep hatred. We want to know David Banner, the clue that the wanted criminal is absorbing people. Absorbers slaughtered the entire base in order to find him, and he had to avenge his dead colleagues. Fang Quan clicked his tongue and raised his head slightly. The ghost soldier holding the document immediately got up and presented the document in front of Rose. Ross looked at the content on the information and smiled bitterly. This is the answer. He will definitely come. This information was given to Fang Quan by Nick Fury. Then it means that my schedule is controlled by Nick Fury. The King of Agents deserves to be the King of Agents. The leader Ghosting's blood eyes flashed fiercely. He raised his head. His eyes seemed to look into the distance through countless obstacles, and then turned to report to Fang Quan. During these days, as Fang Quan's power became stronger and stronger, the ghost army gradually came to the world, and a defense structure was formed centering on Fang Quan's position. Just now, the ghost army operating in the dark country noticed that the powerful abnormal energy magnetic field of the main world was approaching here, and spread the picture to the leader ghost. Listening to the report, Fang Quan couldn't help laughing out loud. Absorbers are rushing here 100 kilometers away from the south. Ross didn't have the slightest hesitation, and directly picked up the phone. Preparing to attack, the absorber is heading towards my coordinates 100 kilometers away to the south. Since the base was attacked, Ross has been preparing every second for how to kill the absorber, and he has done a lot of preparations for this. Most combat troops also remain on standby. Nick Fury's complexion is also ugly, absorbing his top combat ability. Ordinary weapons are useless at all. Fang Quan admired the negative energy emanating from Rose in front of him with interest. Interesting. Challenge task. Ross let the negative progress bar reach 100%. Task reward. Number of draws +1. Ross progress bar, 84%. Fang Quan's eyes lit up, and he decided to keep this weak mortal temporarily. The sky in the distance suddenly shone brightly, followed by a deafening explosion sound from the sky, bringing a burst of powerful shockwave across the ground. A terrified voice came from the walkie-talkie at the secretary's waist. No, he's immune to missile attacks. Gamma missiles don't work. The enemy's speed has broken the sound barrier. The energy is special, it cannot be locked. It cannot be locked. Black Hawk 2 has been destroyed. Black Hawk 2 has been destroyed. All kinds of good news came out in just a few seconds, and the face of the combat secretary also turned pale in a few seconds. The restraint they prepared did not have the desired effect. General Ross's eyes turned red, and he clenched his fists and let out a low growl of deep hatred. David Banner. He rushed out of the villa angrily, drew a pistol from his waist and pointed it at the sky. David Banner, I'm here, get out. General Ross roared furiously, and cursed at the sky hoarsely. Fang Quan clicked his tongue and saw the progress bar slowly increasing. this is the easiest task I have ever encountered. This is already a mature progress bar, you can work hard on your own. In less than 4 minutes, all the arrangements made by General Ross for one night failed, and the losses were heavy. All fighter planes and soldiers blocking the road were killed. 80 kilometers away, Absorber turned into the body of thunder, and quickly shuttled through the sky, tearing up all the fighters intercepted in front of him. All the various missiles fired over were also intercepted by the anti-attack position. The face made of lightning was full of deep-seated hatred, and his eyes were fixed on a certain reaction wave 100 kilometers away. This was the result he obtained after spending one night, locking on to Rose's genetic aura fluctuations. For this day of revenge, he has waited for 30 years. Soon, thunder and lightning flashed in the sky, and dark clouds covered the sky. An old face made of lightning emerged from the dark clouds, roaring at the ground, "Ross!" Rose was holding a pistol on the ground, his face flushed red with anger, and the guards around him stopped him. "General, rage. General, go. His target is you. General, retreat quickly. All our frontline arrangements have failed. General, let's go." Ross pushed the guards away angrily. "I, Ross, have fought for my country all my life and have never escaped. David Banner, don't you want my life? Come down, I'll give it to you. The grievances of our generation should be ended by you and me." Quote. In the sky, the absorbing voice was crazy and distorted, with bursts of thunder. "Ross, I have been waiting for you for 30 years. Do you know how I got here for 30 years? You made me lose my ideals, my love, my wife, the 30 years I spent with my son, and everything I had." Quote. Rose's eyes were bloodshot, and he cursed, "Devil! Beast! You have the ability to come at me, what are you doing to kill me?" The voice of the absorbing person was full of hatred like a madman. "It's you. It's this hegemonic country. It's all these beliefs that hurt all mankind. It's you who made me lose everything, and I want you to lose everything too. Try my 30 years of suffering. Rose, you deserve to die. Ross, you're the devil going to hell." Quote. Absorber rushed down in rage, carrying blue thunder all over his body, vowing to kill the enemy with his own hands. Fang Quan chuckled and snapped his fingers. Numerous ghost soldiers flew into the air from the shadows, and various long-range attack weapons appeared in their hands, flying darts, bombs, smoke bombs, jamming bombs, etc. At the same time, an invisible dark sanctuary unfolded, protecting the entire villa. Bang, bang, bang. The absorber slammed into the dark sanctuary at an extremely fast speed, and the blue thunder collided with the pitch-black sanctuary, making a fierce explosion sound. Boom! In an instant, the terrifying lightning storm shockwave erupted, blasting the surrounding air violently and roaring, and even blasting out countless large pits on the ground outside the villa. The absorber screamed and flew upside down, smashed fiercely on the ground far away and slid continuously, leaving deep ravines on the ground. Rose in the yard also calmed down a lot, and immediately turned to look at Fang Quan, who was sitting at the head. Fang Quan propped his chin with his hands, and smiled brightly. "It seems that there is a story in it that is enough to make you dig your lungs. Tell me, and I will save your life for the time being." Ross had a desolate face, and couldn't help but feel deep sorrow. "Back then, we were implementing the Super Soldier Research Program, and he was in charge of a part of the Immune Gene Research Program. Because the consultant refused to allow him to perform super immune serum injections on the human body, he just get yourself an injection. By the time we found out that something was wrong, it was already several years later. By then, he already had a son, Bruce Banner." Quote. In front of the gate of the villa, the lightning absorber had a ferocious and crazy face, clapped his hands on the dark sanctuary, and let out a desperate howl. "I just want to save my son. You made me lose my love. You made me lose my love. Love. Rose, you have left me without love." Rose's face was devastated, full of guilt. "I stopped his crazy research plan, but I didn't expect that he was trying to save his son. After he was disqualified from research, he felt that there was no hope of saving his son, so he detonated in despair. Entered the Gamma Laboratory, and tried to kill his son, so that he would not have a life of pain and despair. Before investigating, Ross thought David Banner was just a mad scientist. After the investigation was clear, only endless guilt and remorse remained in Rose's heart. "I cut off a father's hope of saving his son with his own hands." Banner, who had been silent for a long time, began to tremble slightly, with his hands on his shoulders, curled up, his eyes changed from brown to blue, and turned into the same blue as his father. The dusty memory was lifted little by little. Banner's voice was trembling. My mother was accidentally killed by a desperate father in order to protect me. Before my mother died, she struggled and ran out of the door so that I would not see her die in front of me. In front of the gate of the villa, the absorbing face was covered with tears of lightning. You made me lose my love. Rose, you made me lose my true love. That day, David Banner died in despair. What survived was just a shell filled with revenge and hatred. His own soul was buried long ago on the day his wife died and the day he and his son parted for more than 30 years. The hateful and crazily distorted soul seeks power by all means, even if it is to use his son. He must gain the power to devour everything and become a demon to avenge these enemies. After Fang Quan listened, he smiled. Interesting story, David Banner. Killing people is not a pleasure, but killing one's heart is a pleasure. Only by destroying the belief in Rose's heart can the progress bar be advanced to 100. What is Ross most concerned about? Definitely his army is gone. Ross looked at Fang Quan in shock. Wait, what are you doing? Fang Quan snapped his fingers, and the leader, Ghost Shadow, struck like lightning, knocking out the combat secretary, snatched the walkie-talkie from her waist, dodged to avoid the siege of the surrounding guards, and came to Fang Quan respectfully. Fang Quan picked up the walkie-talkie and smiled devilishly. Ross, you must care about those soldiers. Rose's pupils shrank sharply, his face was pale, and his voice was trembling. What do you want to do? Fang Quan cleared his throat, disguised his voice with dark magic power, and imitated Rose's voice when he was seriously injured and dying. The absorber is here, the whole army obeys the order, attack me, attack at all costs. After speaking, Fang Quan directly crushed the walkie-talkie. Now, the last order Ross's army received was to attack here, with no room for maneuver. Ross went crazy, rushed up desperately, and was told by the Special Forces team members, Fang Quan. You devil! How could these plans in the short term stop absorbing people? Fang Quan is letting his soldiers die. The corner of Tony's mouth twitched. Fang Magician, what are you doing with this picture? As a native of Eagle Country, Tony feels that at this time, he still needs to protect his compatriots. Fang Quan had a playful smile on his face. Don't you think it's funny? I need this multiple choice question. Either Rose dies before the army arrives. Either Rose watched all his soldiers die. Quote, Tony swallowed, realizing more clearly that this is a dark king through and through, a dark king who takes pleasure in playing with people's hearts. His only stance is to find it amusing. Fang Quan rested his chin on his hands, admiring Rose's bloodshot eyes and pale complexion with interest. Those who died were all from the Eagle Country. I really find it interesting. Rose's lips trembled slightly, and he seemed to be able to hear the screams of his soldiers dying under the absorber's hands. Ah, General, save me. Why don't you die? If you die alone, none of us will die. You are the devil. You are a devil who lives in vain. Ross negative progress bar, 94%. The pistol in Rose's hand fell to the ground, and his whole body collapsed. Get out of the way. I'm going to save them. Let me die. He could calmly order the soldiers to charge, but he couldn't just watch the soldiers die for himself. Rose, who was old and strong, broke away from the guards and rushed to the gate of the villa. In front of the gate of the villa, the absorber laughed wildly and twisted. No. Rose, I will not kill you. I will let you watch your soldiers die. I will take everything from you and make you live in pain for the rest of your life. Just like everything you did to me back then. Quote. Rose rushed to the gate, but bumped into an invisible wall, and his head was bleeding. His pupils narrowed sharply. He turned his head in horror, looked at Fang Quan, and saw a playful devil smile. Fang Quan put his fingers up in front of his mouth, showing a devilish smile. Yo, I forgot to release the domain. Ross negative progress bar, 96%. Rose's eyes were filled with blood and tears, and he cried, blood, please. Please let me out. They are just children, and they are the future of Eagle Nation. Fang Quan smiled gently. Yeah, it's not mine anyway. In front of the gate of the villa, the absorber laughed and patted the dark sanctuary. Yes. Yes. Rose. Yes. Fang Quan satisfactorily absorbed the energy of despair and mourning that ordinary people could not disparate from, and showed an intoxicated smile. go and bring Betty here. Add Betty and this fire is in place. Ghost soldiers disappeared in the shadows. Rose's pupils shrank sharply, and despair swept his heart. What are you going to do? No. With blood on his face, he rushed towards Fang Quan, trying to stop him. Ghost soldiers appeared in front of Rose, suppressing him tightly. And those special forces members have also been suppressed by the ghost soldiers with Tang Dao. Nick Fury's face was green and white. Mr. Fang, these are not in our agreement. He could make sacrifices to achieve his goals, but it wasn't in his interest to see Rose die here. Fang Quan looked at Nick Fury playfully. Why, do you have an opinion? Nick Fury took a deep breath, and gave up the words that were about to come to his mouth. Deep in his silent eyes, dark waves surged. Is it really right to do this by yourself? His heart was in a mess and he didn't know what else to do now. For the first time, the Invincible King of Agents tasted a brutal sense of powerlessness. Soon, in less than 3 minutes, 2 ghost soldiers carried a stretcher and carried Betty into the hall. Betty was in a coma, lying unconscious on a stretcher. It seemed that the battle yesterday had caused her a lot of damage. Banner saw Betty appear and stood up excitedly. Betty. Fang Quan smiled gently. Throw it out. Rose's eyes were full of despair, and he stretched out his hand to stop the ghost soldier, and screamed in despair, no. My daughter. Banner stood up excitedly. Fang Quan, you can't do this. This is his girlfriend. Fang Quan punched out Banner directly. Banner flew upside down and hit the carved wall directly, with blood on his head, fell to the ground and fell into a coma. The 2 ghost soldiers used their agility and quickly flew over to the gate of the villa. In front of the gate, the excitement on the face of the absorbing person became more and more crazy. Betty. Betty. It's Ross's Betty. I'm going to kill her. Ross watched Betty's figure fly towards the gate of the villa in despair. A certain nerve in his mind was completely broken. Ross progress bar 100%. Congratulations to the host for getting 1 lottery draw. Betty's figure stopped in front of the gate of the villa, only half a meter away from the dark sanctuary. Absorber stretched out 2 thunder palms with ecstasy on his face, wanting to tear apart the enemy's daughter, watching Betty stop half a meter away from him. The ecstasy on his face froze. He raised his head and stared blankly at Fang Quan, who got up. Ross stared blankly at his daughter, who was still in the safe area, and then turned his head to look at Fang Quan in a foolish way, completely unaware of what this demon was trying to do. Fang Quan smiled and was very satisfied with the expressions of everyone present. Start lottery draw. Congratulations to the host for gaining control of Fei Ying Group. The Flying Shadow Group, also known as the Night Bat Group. With bat-like wings, it is the only unit among the 9 legions that has the combat ability of the Air Force. At high speed, the palm can emit light waves, and the light waves can also change endlessly. This is an air corps with excellent melee combat, long-distance combat, and mobility. The only downside is that the defense is slightly weaker. However, with the blessing of immortality, this is not a problem at all. Fang Quan could even clearly feel that the dark magic power in his body had doubled sharply, and his overall attributes had doubled. Fang Quan moved his neck subconsciously, exuding a terrifying pressure from the Demon King all over his body, and a dark grinning spectacle face loomed behind him. The lightning on Absorber's face turned red and blue, and the thunder on his body crackled. Are you going to be my enemy too? Hand her over. Fang Quan put a finger upright in front of his mouth, showing a charming evil smile. Do you know what my favorite delicacy is? It makes all of you despair. This taste really makes me intoxicated. Negative energy can not only bring the number of draws, but sometimes it can also enhance its own magic power. Absorber rage, slapping the dark sanctuary in front of him. Get out. I'm going to kill you. Don't hide in this turtle shell. Fang Quan moved, the ground under his feet exploded, breaking through the air all the way, and appeared in front of Absorber like lightning, smiling and kissing his fist with Absorber's face. Boom. The sound exploded. Shockwave overturned the ground in front of the gate of the villa. Absorbing people flew out like a missile, directly crashed into the hill not far away, blasted the whole hill, pierced through the hill and flew out 50. It took many meters away to stop. Standing at the door of the villa, Fang Quan felt the obsessive dark power in his body rapidly expanding, and the smile on his face became brighter. It really is the taste of desperation that satisfies me. Rose found hope in despair and ran towards her daughter with all her might. The ghost soldiers around him stopped blocking him, and they also let go of the suppressed special forces. The ghost soldiers began to gather slowly, staring at their king with loyal and eager blood eyes, standing quietly in the courtyard, their eyes moved with Fang Quan's movement. Tony held his forehead and looked helpless. This guy is playing with people's hearts again. He didn't necessarily want the military to die, but he definitely wanted to make Ross desperate. That's right, he is just looking for fun. Banner collapsed on the floor, unconscious, foaming at the mouth. Nick Fury and the others were also dumbfounded. They couldn't understand Fang Quan's unpredictable decision, so they could only stay obediently in the lobby, not daring to leave the villa area. The destructive ability that absorbs people is too strong. If they dare to leave the range of Fang Quan's protection, they may be killed in seconds after they go out. Standing in front of the gate of the villa, Fang Quan felt that he was in good condition. The absorber was covered in thunder. Rage exploded, shattering the gravel that was pressing on him, and the whole person was suspended. Rage. You fool, I'm going to kill you. Fang Quan smiled contemptuously and punched him in the air. The fist turned into a magic dragon, roared out, and slammed into the absorbing person directly. As soon as the absorber finished cursing, he saw a file-sized dragon flying over, and immediately closed his mouth, terrified, and raised his arms to block in horror. A trace of disdain flashed in Fang Quan's eyes. After all, they are just ordinary people who have mastered power. David Banner is indeed a very smart scientist, but he is definitely not a good fighter. If it were Rose who had mastered this power, he would definitely dodge his own attacks as much as possible. Absorber just ate Fang Quan's magic dragon punch in such a stupid way. His upper body exploded and disappeared, his lower body staggered and paced in place, and it took several breaths to recondense his body. Absorbing people looked at Fang Quan in horror. What kind of monster are you? Why can you break my defensive position? This is an instantaneous perfect angle defense position, even missile attacks can be resisted, why didn't it work? Fang Quan was taken aback. What defensive stance? What kind of tricks are you playing? Where is the defensive stance? Fang Quan put aside his doubts and punched again, but this time the punch was followed by a roar of a flame dragon. After mastering the dragon talisman, Fang Quan possessed the perfect magical ability, but there has been no place where he can use it to his heart's content. This time, Fang Quan is going to use this absorber as a sandbag. The absorber finally came to his senses this time, and stretched out his hands to fully support his defensive position, preventing the attack of this terrifying human being. The situation is unknown, but if he is beaten by this guy a few times, he will definitely have a nervous breakdown. Energized body is strong, but one's mental ability is not unlimited. Every time I reorganize my body, I need to consume a lot of mind. If I do it a few more times, I will definitely go crazy. Absorbing the thoughts in people's minds, the Yanlong flying in front of him is getting bigger and bigger, and he feels that he is very confident. I can even block missiles, just inexplicably. Boom. In the courtyard, countless ghost soldiers raised their heads in unison, looking at the absorber who was blasted into the sky by the shockwave of the flame dragon's explosion. His head moved slowly following the arc of the absorber's explosion. Slap. The absorber fell to the ground with smoke, and the lightning on his body flickered, as if he had paid public food all night. Tony, Nick Fury and others stared dumbfounded at the rise of a small mushroom cloud comparable to a big bang, and the shockwave directly hit the dark sanctuary, plowing the surrounding ground. God, is this a fist? This is a face-to-face cloud bomb. Fang Quan looked at the two intact lands left under the absorber's feet, and suddenly realized. It turned out that the old man really had it, but it was too brittle, and he didn't feel it when he hit it. The absorber coughed twice, stood up staggeringly, raised his head and looked at Fang Quan in fear. Terrible. This person's attack ability is too strong. I can't beat myself at all. No, I have to run. Absorber turned around and ran without any hesitation. The dark thunder all over his body exploded, and he flew into the sky at extreme speed, flying more than 100 meters away within a breath. Fang Quan smiled and snapped his fingers. Flying Shadow Legion. With Fang Quan as the center, the surrounding world suddenly became dimmed. Countless pairs of blood eyes opened in the air, and jet-black human-shaped phantoms with huge bat wings flew out and rushed towards the sky. And in the sky, blood eyes opened one after another, staring coldly at the absorbing person covered in lightning. As soon as the absorber rushed to the sky, he saw the blood eyes full of evil light all around him, and stopped in shock, not daring to rush towards these blood eyes. What the hell is this? Are you being targeted by a demon? Whoosh! The absorber heard the wind behind him, turned around hastily, and saw a large group of feying soldiers coming towards him. This is a group of winged shadow soldiers with extremely high aerial combat ability. Shocked, he hurriedly waved his hands, shaking the thunder in all directions. The surrounding feying soldiers were quickly penetrated by the thunder, turning into groups of black aura and blasting away. On the ground, Tony opened his mouth wide and stared at the sky dumbfounded. Nick Fury gasped, "Air Force. This is his Air Force. God, I thought that this Dark King didn't have air troops. There is such an Air Force." Fortunately, he did not show a powerful weapon, and he was still within the acceptable range. Phil Coulson pointed at the absorber in shock. "What is that?" Everyone stared wide-eyed and gasped in unison. After taking a closer look, I saw that in the darkening sky, black trickles gathered together to form a huge amount of dark palm. Those black trickles are clearly the gathering of ninjas in black with wings. The smart reporter on Tony's waist began to scream, and his face turned pale instantly. There is an abnormal increase in the ambient magnetic field. In the sky, flying shadow soldiers gathered above the absorber, stretching out their palms in unison, aiming at the absorber. Waves of light gathered in the palms of feying soldiers, and the surrounding light waves converged forward, forming a ring-shaped jet black magic circle with huge amounts of it. The center of the magic circle gradually lit up, and terrifying energy fluctuations continued to radiate. Absorber's body was constantly fluctuating with lightning, and he noticed the undisguised terrifying energy fluctuations above his head. He raised his head in horror and saw a huge dark magic circle aimed at him. On the ground, Nick Fury opened his mouth wide open in shock. This is their heavy weapon. What is going on with this thing that seems to be comparable to the power of laser weapons? Just now I felt lucky that this group of people didn't have powerful weapons, but in the next second they were slapped in the face at the speed of light. Tony was shocked. Magic can still be played like this. Rose looked at the huge halo lit up in the sky in horror. What the hell is this? Everyone never expected that Fang Quan's Dark Army would still have such an operation. It only needs to gather a group of soldiers together and it can be used as a heavy weapon. Fang Quan stood on the ground with a smile on his face. Interesting, the light wave attack of the Flying Shadow Legion is too powerful. Absorber wanted to escape in horror, but found that he moved 50 meters, and the dark magic circle above his head also moved 50 meters, and he was locked tightly. Boom! Dark light waves gushed down from the center of the magic circle, directly pouring on the absorbing person, suppressing him to the ground. The absorber screamed violently and struggled continuously, but was ruthlessly suppressed by the powerful dark light waves. The energy on his body was being consumed violently, and the energy on his body was constantly becoming dim. Fang Quan observed the mutation on him with interest. What are you doing? Hiding your ability, and then trying to kill me. This guy is an absorber. Until now, he has not used the ability to absorb. Isn't this hiding his own selfishness? The staggering figure shrouded in the dark light wave was taken aback for a moment, then stood up slowly, changed his panic just now, and his tone was full of curiosity. I'm surprised, how did you know my secret? You know, so far, the only person who can guess my secret may be my son. The position of absorbing people's surroundings began to expand continuously, absorbing the dark light waves suppressed on his body continuously, and his entire body also began to turn pitch black. However, Fang Quan's complexion began to become strange, and a feeling of being like an arm like a finger emerged spontaneously. Absorbing people felt this powerful dark energy, opened their arms and laughed loudly. You actually use energy to attack me who can devour the energy of all things, you are really crazy. You expect to use energy to kill a super energy immortal body. Humanity. Fang Quan rubbed his chin with a regretful expression on his face. To be honest, I wanted to use the power of the dragon to play with you, and I will suppress it after I get tired of it. But now, this matter is over dramatically. Absorber devoured dark energies he wasn't supposed to. And in front of absorbing people, stood a Dark King who was in charge of the 2 Dark Legions. The task is completed, the number of lucky draws +1. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.